Your prayers to one, don't forget my son. Choose the good, everyone.
All right. Mr. Bart.
Hey, Mr. Drew Morg. Where have you been, buddy?
My goodness. Let's fix this a little bit here. The stunts I had to pull off to make this double stream today happen is out of control.
You have been a busy man.
Yes, sir. So, let's check in with the chat for a second.
Yo, the chat.
I just
Been
ate...
good. We've been chatting away for half an hour, Drew.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Was it 2 or was it 2:30? I can't even... I thought it was 2:30.
It was 2. But never mind.
Oh my goodness. That's, I even took extra care to be extra sensitive about the time because I know Bart is a scientist. And I was like, okay. I covered it.
According to the witch from Chorley, I'm not.
I see. The Wicks from Chorley. Okay. Diet soda. I just had a sandwich. Guys, we had to go suboptimal today. Let's just say that. Whew, okay. Let me do the intro for Bart live, which normally I handle ahead of time, but we have to improvise here, guys, and we do that very well. So, Bart K, if you guys do not know who this man is, this is YouTube's resident expert keto/carnivore scientist, an actual scientist, not a YouTube scientist, not a fake doctor scientist, not a PhD. I help medical patient scientists, an actual scientist who has conducted actual, medical experiments in a laboratory formal setting. He has a background in academia, meaning he has taught doctors how to do some of the things that they spout off online and in person. He has extensive knowledge with cholesterol, the effects on the human body regarding cholesterol, testing high-level athletes in a laboratory setting. So, in terms of everything that I've ever wanted to know, that's the specifics and the hard questions, Bart K has been the guy that I've sought answers to, and he can go as deep as you want to go down the rabbit hole of studies, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to pull him out of that rabbit hole. So, Bart K, welcome to the show.
Drew, thank you. I thought you'd never ask. I thought you'd never invite me to come on.
Oh, no. Come on, Bart. I've been a fan since I first ran into you on YouTube. This is our first time talking, guys. We have never spoken before other than just a couple quick chats, like text back and forth in streams and stuff. So I've been interested in your whole thing. I am so glad that we have people like you that are joining into this whole great debate, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
For today, I've called upon this meeting. A lot of people are the ones who call the meeting to me, but today I've called you in. So this will be actually a bit of a role reversal for me, which is great. And we're going to have some interesting things that we can talk about separate from the main reason I brought you in the first place. But in terms of why I brought Bart in specifically today, guys, is we have a very exciting experiment going on and I say experiment maybe not to the level that a scientist would say is adequate. However, we have some willing participants, some willing individuals who have responded to the call to action to join into this experiment where we're going to have one carnivore go vegan for a month, and we're going to have one vegan go omnivore for a month. I have 2 willing participants for this. Okay, the vegan came to me first. He called me out, so to speak. He made a YouTube video saying he wanted me to be the other receiving end of the experiment. I have offered this to Plantriotic in the past and also Ted Carr. Now, I had to turn them down because, guys, it is not responsible for me to go on a vegan diet right now. Even if I wanted to, I am in the middle of a Candida, support supplement regime right now. I still have some more time left to go on that, and I already know what will happen to me if I jumped back into veganism, because I do dabble, I do test the waters with plants. So for me to go 100% vegan is stupid. It's going to be skewed data. It's not going to be useful to anybody. I'm just going to say it sucks, and it's going to be, we want some real information here. We want to start getting to the bottom of this. As we all know, you can find studies that support both sides of the argument, right? So we're going to introduce those men tomorrow, the guinea pigs, if you will. But today, Bart is here to help us design what we want out of this experiment. We're going to talk about the parameters that we should set. We're going to talk about what we should expect from 30 days, if it's 30 days even adequate. We're going to basically form the hypothesis here together today, I hope. And then we're just going to let this thing play out. And we're basically cutting out the middleman, because we have bringing in people from both sides. I think that's the way we have to do this now is we can't rely on mainstream science anymore. We're all kind of know that it's BS, right? So not all of it. But when we get big companies involved, big dollars, I'd rather have 2 guys that nobody has a clue who they are. They're not on social media. They're not really looking to gain anything from this. Dave Feldman, I'm glad you're here, sir. Thank you for checking in. We need to talk. So, Bart, welcome to the channel. If you have anything to add to that, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fascinating sort of an idea to undertake what ostensibly is an informal kind of it's an N equals 2 naturalistic observation is what you're talking about there. Yes. And that's fine. I mean, those kind of things can definitely have their place in forming an overall picture of the inferences that we want to take going forward. What I will say straight away, like up front, is that I want to absolutely support what you're saying with regard to mainstream science. As someone who has been in that industry myself for 17 years, as someone who has an extensive list of peer-reviewed publications myself, experimental works, both in the laboratory and in the field as well, actually. I've authored book chapters, and I don't want to give you my CV, but I've been in this industry up to my armpits for a long time.
Yes.
And what I can tell you is mainstream science is broken. It is bastardized. It is fucked up beyond all recognition. And the thing that's fucked it up, well, there are two or three things really. That's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The fact that this whole thing is driven by the almighty dollar is the first warning sign, basically. Basically, what you've got is you've got a bunch of self-serving industry individuals who are funding the science from the ground up, and in so doing, they are actually buying the conclusions from those authors from the outset. They're saying, here is your funding for your study, Dr. Professor such and such. Here is what you are going to find.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the money that says you're going to find that. Your job is to find that.
Right.
Are you with me?
Right.
Oh, wink, nudge, say no more. So that's the first thing. The second thing that's involved in making science a joke is ego. Okay, now I'm, like the next scientist, I'm just as guilty, probably, in terms of when a scientist takes a position publicly, publishes work that says, I'm concluding such and such, that scientist will defend that castle to the death. Okay. The scientist becomes Cersei standing, looking out the window, over King's Landing, going, not in this lifetime. I'm not giving up this throne.
Right.
I don't care how many fucking dragons are coming, even
especially once they've gained recognition from it, right?
Exactly. So, like, if I put my cart out in front of my store as a scientist and say carnivore is the way to go, then I'm not going to turn around and say, whoops, actually, I had that wrong. You have to be a very, very high level scientist with many, many years of experience, a huge publication list, and no need to actually ever do any more science in your life again, because you're set to actually be in a position where you can change your mind. Example, Tim Noakes. Okay. He set his whole career out on, carbs are the shit. You must have carbs. You must carb up. He was an exercise physiologist who was actually right in vogue when I was doing my training, and that was what we were all taught. And we were all taught that Tim Noakes was basically some kind of deity.
Right.
and that, carbs were the go, and, all of that stuff that we've been taught for the last, 50 years, really. So big ups to him for actually changing his ways and saying, Tim Noakes, was wrong. I made a mistake. Carbs are not the shit. Carbs are shit, actually, is what he's, So money, ego, and the third thing that makes science a joke is that science is personed by human beings. Science itself, the actual process of science, the actual scientific methodology as laid down originally sort of several thousand years ago by the Greeks, is actually a fairly robust, fairly bulletproof, if you like, process. It is a discipline. It says, if you want to conclude X, Y, or Z, here are the parameters that you must have in play. If you don't have those parameters in play, you must not make that assertion, because you are likely to make an error. You are likely to say something that is not scientifically supportable. And unfortunately, what's happened more and more, actually, in the last 10 years even, is more and more absolute, utter, syphilitic drivel has been published in the peer-reviewed literature, because the scientific fraternity at large have lost that discipline.
You're talking about the more traditional sense of science, right? Like when people in the regular world think of, oh, it's a scientific study, they automatically assume just because it exists that it must be true, and that there's nothing that can really supersede that. There's, the scientific method was followed. The, scientists who are impartial were doing the tests. Like, they have all these assumptions about what modern science is. But what you're referring to with these Egyptians was more of a, like, the better good of man. Like, let's see what is really real in the world. And that science is probably long gone at this point, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm saying that originally science was a disciplined procedure which was designed to give us the highest probability that we would get some kind of handle on some kind of objective truth. And it's become a money-driven, ego-driven, personality-driven, ill-disciplined mishmash of just nonsense. 95% of every peer-reviewed publication in the last 10 years is not replicatable. What I'm saying there is that if another group of scientists picked up a study done in the last 10 years, followed that same methodology and repeated that exact same study again, they cannot get the same results.
So this leads me into several areas that I want to branch off into. One of them being this hierarchy of evidence that the vegans like to try and hang their hats on, which I think is hilarious. I think they actually have it backwards, but we'll get into that in a minute. And but like, if there was another scientist like you at your level, or let's say even more research, like, is there anybody out there that's actually agreeing with the vegan science at this point, that is a legitimate research scientist that has performed their own tests? Or do you think they would only agree to it publicly in the context of their employers watching? You know what I'm saying? Like, is there anybody who's looked at the data and is like, this is kind of shit science?
I guess, I start from a standpoint of having a confirmation bias of my own, Drew, and I'm aware of it. And that's one of the things that a scientist does need to be aware of. They need to be aware of their own biases. My bias is that I'm only interested in good, solid, empirical inferences as per the scientific method as laid down by the Greeks several thousand years ago. And as such, on that basis, combined, I guess, with my experience with dealing with, so I've dealt with science, I've been involved in science, I've got some things published, I've been involved in designing science experiments, I've also taught statistics, as into the level where my students used to hate me because I would not allow them to use statistics software like SPSS. What I actually mandated my students to do was to do, for example, they were going to do a repeated measures ANOVA study.
Okay.
I would make them do the repeated measures ANOVA longhand on a piece of paper using a calculator and show they're working. If they handed in an SPSS printout that says, here's what SPSS told me when I punched these numbers in, they got an F.
Right.
Because any monkey can be trained to use a statistics software package. Unless you've done that math yourself, you have no fucking idea what's been done.
Right.
And that's how the wool gets pulled over your eyes. You go, oh, the F ratio, which isn't even a ratio, by the way, it's a quotient. Fuck me. Anyway, the F ratio is above the critical alpha value. Therefore, this is canonical. God has spoken. End of discussion. Never mind the scientific methodology that was used. Never mind the validity flaws. Never mind the fact that actually positivistic alpha testing, P is less than 0.05, is completely inappropriate anyway. Never mind the flaws in the actual mathematics of the repeated measures ANOVA that most people don't know anything about. Oh, scientists did put the ANOVA math together, it must be good. People with white coats did this, it must be good. So, I've done all that stuff, and also having actually been involved at the coalface, to give your viewers an idea, those that don't know me, I have worked in a university laboratory teaching, and this laboratory is a cadaver lab. And for those that don't know what that is, a cadaver is a person who has died and left their body to science. In other words, I have worked in a lab with, bodies in bags, zippy, cut. Let's pull the guts out and have a look at this thing. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. So I actually have quite the holistic, here's the science, here's the math, here's the actual physiology. I have pulled these hearts out. I've had a look at these aortas. I've seen these people's medical histories that come along with them, So I'm basing my opinion on a holistic overview, I guess. And to me, carnivory is definitely, absolutely the correct approach. The so-called gold standard advice that is given to the public is wrong on just about every level you can imagine. It is advice that is designed to lead you to an early grave. And while you're on your path to your early grave, it's designed to empty your pockets out so that you can give all your hard-earned money to the people in the white coats going, yes, cholesterol's bad, and stuff like that. So, my cynicism is not just because I'm at odds with a particular faction of the scientific fraternity. My cynicism is based around the holistic view of the whole situation. So I know that's a very long-winded diatribe, but that's basically where I'm coming from in terms of that stuff.
Well, I think that it's good to have a holistic point of view, and I think that's what the vegans or the ex-vegans that are joining this great debate is people like me, people like Bobby's perspective, and there's many others, but we're all getting involved in the nitty-gritty details of this because it does take scientifically minded people who have kept a good record of their results over time and who are at least attempting to remain unbiased. I mean, if anything, we had a vegan bias doing the things that we did. Obviously, we wouldn't have been vegan for 4.5 years. That wasn't meant to be some science experiment, So, like you said, you ended up in the cadaver lab where you had the theory and the science on one hand, and then you had the holistic approach where you had the experience on the other hand. And this is, I think, what gives more credence to people like, Bobby and myself, who are these ex-vegans who are coming in and saying, hey, this is our results. Let's talk about this. It gives a lot more, people want to listen to it because we've had that extensive experience as vegans. It's a lot easier to throw shade at vegans when you haven't tried it. Not to say that your information isn't accurate. Maybe you were smarter all along for never trying veganism in the first place, right? But the point is that gives us a holistic approach. We tried your diet, now we're back on this diet. We've tried carnivore, we've tried just like sort of lazy omnivore, veganism all the way, all these different factions within veganism. And we have sort of a solid picture now. Like I have a pretty solid picture now, and I kind of know what each thing does. And in certain cases, certain things can be used as tools maybe, but as a general lifestyle, I definitely agree with you that carnivory seems to make the most sense. And it also, you can look at the data and then you can experiment with it. And so far, it's the closest thing to replicating that data in the real world. Whereas veganism, you're sold this huge pie in the sky thing. And then when you actually go run it in the real world, you, yourself, and everybody else is getting mediocre to poor results. And I think that's the main difference between the two sides before we really get into it. Because I did it wrong. Yes, we are all doing it wrong. So I wanted to sort of expand upon some of the things that you said regarding the math requirements. So a lot of people on YouTube, you got all the vegans doing it. You even have carnivores doing it, of course. Everybody with their own bias and whatnot. However, when it comes to actually breaking down studies as a lay person, because I am open about the fact that I do not want to get into the studies. It leaves me open to too much criticism in terms of, hey, Drew, you pointed this one thing out wrong. It's very easy to nitpick on a lay person trying to use studies as evidence when in reality we know just right off the bat, correlation does not equal causation. So that could be you could easily write studies off from that standpoint, from my perspective. However, you got guys like Vegan Gains, for instance, and he's going to stand wholeheartedly on the studies that he presents. However, he doesn't understand to a very, very deep level what this math is even saying. He doesn't understand what an N equals 5 on the vegan side tested against N equals 1,000 on a carnivore, on a omnivore side. Like, for instance, Happy Healthy Vegan has presented studies where they show the ALA to DHA EPA conversion, right? And in this particular study, there's only 5 men and 5 women on the vegan side being tested. And now they all had pretty good blood serum levels of DHA and EPA. However, they were not getting their compared to the meat eaters, the salmon eaters were their own control group, and there was thousands of them being tested. So you had thousands of salmon eaters testing their blood serum, and then you had 5 men and 5 women. Like you have somebody like Happy Healthy Vegans who's taking that study and saying, see, this means that vegans get plenty of DHA and EPA in their brain or in their blood, and when it comes down right down to it, this study could be completely thrown out by somebody like you who actually understands what's really going on here. Like the math does matter.
And that is why Richard Burgess will not debate me, because
right.
he knows that. He makes lots of excuses. He makes lies. He makes slanderous statements about me doxing people, which, by the way, I have never done. And then he comes online and makes statements about the Canadian law, which he clearly hasn't even read, doesn't even understand, claiming that I don't understand it. It looks pretty straightforward to me, but there you go.
Right.
Basically, Richard Burgess could not tell you the difference between his elbow and his asshole if you labeled them both and then taught him how to read. Okay. He's in the same ilk as people like Mike the vegan, who will flash a screen up, flash a paper up on the screen for 3 seconds and say, look, here's proof. Gregor does the same thing. Joel Kahn does the same thing. And these are guys that actually should know better, those last two.
Yes, absolutely.
People like, Mike the vegan and Richard Burgess are lay people, but people like, I'd put Simon in the same category, to be fair. Goji Boy, for those that don't know who I'm talking about. I think both Mike the vegan and Goji Boy both hold master's degrees, but there's no actual evidence of that in their the way they present themselves, what they actually say, because they will flash up a Vox Pop style headline paper for 3 seconds and say, look, here's proof. Okay, what we need to be clear about here, boys and girls, is one thing that's very, very simple. Science does not prove anything above first principles, okay? We can provide a proof that E equals MC squared. That's fine, we can do that. That's a first principle, okay? When you start looking at complex systems with multiple degrees of freedom, as example, a human body, there are millions of degrees of freedom. Now, a degree of freedom is a thing that can vary between two individuals, or indeed within a given individual from one point in time to another point in time. If you're going to do pure science, what you have to do is control every single possible degree of freedom between individuals or within individuals, depending on what your research design is. Okay. If you fail to control any one of those degrees of freedom, you have an inference. You don't have proof. Proof is irrefutable. Proof is cause and effect. This leads to that every time with 100% concordance.
It has to be 100%.
100%. If you want to show me a correlation study and say this causes that, I want to see a straight line drawn through a data set where there are no residuals around that data line. None at all. If there are any residuals at all, what that means is there are other factors at play that contribute to this outcome. Therefore, you don't have a proof. You have an inference. So what the debate becomes is, how good is your inference? How wide are the residuals around that trend line? Are they close to it? Is your R-squared value close to 1? Like 0.9 something? Then you could go, oh, okay, you've got something here that predicts the other thing pretty well. If your R-squared value is like the one that Richard likes to show all the time on that ridiculous LDL study, where he's got the line drawn through and, oh, look at this high correlation. The R-squared value is 0.61.
It's just too low to mean anything.
To translate that for those that don't know the math, what that means is that 61% of the variance in the variable Y is shared with variance on the x-axis. Okay? What that means is that 40-something% of the outcome is attributable to something other than the thing that is being claimed to be the causal artifact. Now, 40% is a lot. And indeed, the 60% that is shared is an association. It's not a causal artifact because there is no mechanism to underpin it. If you look at the Bradford Hill criteria, there are 9 criteria set forward by Bradford Hill, I think in the 1920s from memory. Don't quote me on the date, but there you go. Anyway, there are definitely 9 Bradford Hill criteria. And if you want to produce a graph that shows a correlation between X and Y, be that cholesterol and heart disease, or whether that be height and weight, or whether that be anything you like, doesn't matter. You must meet all 9 Bradford Hill criteria to even think about whether you might possibly have a causal artifact going on. So all 9 are met, then you can think about it. Okay, is there a causality here? Possibly. 8 out of 9? Done. Not causal.
Right.
End of discussion.
And this is a little bit... Oh, sorry.
The cholesterol hypothesis, the one that Richard Burgess likes to produce all the time with that graph, meets 0 Bradford Hill criteria. Not
0.
8, 7.
not 8, not 7. Nothing.
None of them.
So when... And this is another thing too and I think I heard this in the Chris Kresser or Joel Kahn interview, if I'm not mistaken, when they were going back and forth. Like Chris Kresser was bringing up the fact that some of these percentages are just too low to matter. Like when a lot of the vegans are like, well, there's a 9% increase in, like, I think it's the Greger eggs, the egg information, all that egg study. They're like, there's a 15% increase in heart disease in people who eat eggs 1 or more a day. It's like, well, just even a 15% is nothing. Like, it needs to be, like, I believe 100% to even be considered, like, even maybe relevant, because otherwise there's just too many factors involved.
And the other thing, Drew, that people need to understand about these results that get published in these epididymology studies is that these results are what is called a relative risk ratio.
Relative risk ratio.
Now, a relative risk ratio, the best way I can explain that to viewers is to go like this. Let's say, hypothetically, we have 2 subject pools of otherwise identical individuals with every single degree of freedom controlled absolutely.
All million.
Which we don't have in an epidemiology study before we even start, do we? But anyway, let's say we do have that. Let's
play the
shits
game.
and giggles, just for fun. 1 million in each pool. Okay. Let's say on the left, we have an intervention group who took statin drugs. And let's say of those 1 million people in our follow-up period, one of those people suffered a heart attack. Okay. Now, on the right, let's have our non-intervention or our control group who got a placebo, not a statin. Let's say 2 of those people had a heart attack in the same observation period.
It's a 100% increase.
We have a 100% increase in relative risk. And so now I can go to the editor of the journal and say, look, Mr. Editor of the journal, I have a 100% increase in risk ratio. If you take a statin, basically what I'm saying is that halves your risk. Or if you don't take a statin, that doubles your risk. That's how the inverse of that math works. And the editor of the journal says, that's fantastic. That's a great, very powerful study. You've got 2 million persons of N equals 2 million here. You've followed them for, say, 5 years. So you've actually got 2 times 5 is 10 million person years of follow-up. You have statistical power through the roof there because you have a huge sample size. You have a 100% increase in risk. I'll publish your study. Congratulations, Dr. Such and Such, Dr. Crackpot. Okay.
I've heard you explain this before, and it's amazing.
What's the problem with that? It's not a 100% increase in risk.
Right. The absolute risk is like 0.0001. Yeah, it's like 1 in a million to 2 in a million. It's like big deal. Like you could get hit by a car easier than, that risk ratio. So who cares? It's irrelevant.
So that 17% increase in risk that is reported in that egg study that Gregor goes on about, it's the same sort of thing. It's not even 100%. It's 17%. Which when you make that into an absolute change and the actual number of hard clinical endpoints that they were monitoring in that study, what you've got is a difference between your 2 groups, your egg eaters and your non-egg eaters, of 2/3, of 5/8, of 7/9 of fuck all. You've got nothing.
Right.
It's nonsense. It's absolute statistical smoke and mirrors designed to pull the wool over the lay public's eyes and be impressive and be something that you can publish in a journal. But in terms of its actual clinical applicability to the real world, its use, fucking nonsense.
Yeah, that's extremely powerful information, especially to a layperson. Like, I had no idea about any of that. And then when I heard you explain that before, it just made perfect sense. I mean, you need to put it in the right context, and people don't even understand that this is going on. They don't understand that this is the way that conclusions are presented to the audience. That's why when you go to PubMed, it doesn't tell the whole story, because you're just looking at a conclusion that's this big out of a 5-page study, and who knows who funded it, who knows anything about it. I mean, and then the vegans, they're literally just going to Google, carnivore debunked, and then it's like cool. You have a bunch of studies here. We can all do that.
I'm a little prick, and I got to flash a study for 3 seconds. There you go.
Right, and they can't break it down themselves. They have no idea. They're not doing. In other words, if they were scientists for real, they would take that study. They would try and tear it apart to make sure that it supported their viewpoint. But of course, they do not do that. They hope that it supports their viewpoint from an extreme bias point of view. Then they take it and then they flash that in front of people. See, I don't even want to get into the studies with people when it comes to debating on my channel, because I'm going to be forced to do the same thing, and it's useless to people. I just talk to a guy like Vegan Gains, and I say, well, what are your results? Like, what are your N=1 results? What about the results of everybody around you? That's a much better indication of if this thing is even possible to do in the real world to begin with, right? Like, who cares what it even says on paper? Even if the vegan diet was proven without a shadow of a doubt to be better on paper, if nobody could execute it in the real world, it is useless, right? It's like having a 1,000 horsepower engine, but the best tires you can buy are made of freaking glass. You can't get any traction. You can't get any power to the ground. So that's my little analogy there. I like cars, of course, but it's like this happens all the time. Now I want to get into this hierarchy of evidence thing that is brought up constantly.
You were going to say bullshit then, and you should have.
Well, trust me, I get into a lot of it here. I want this interview. I need to keep it like straightforward, and I want this to be presented to people as like a culmination of the questions that need to be asked to you and for this situation. And I need this stuff to be clippable and not family friendly. You could say whatever you want. I'm going to say whatever. I'm sure I'm going to get into it as well, but I want this to appear to be, technical, tight and technical.
I get the need for the family friendly thing, but I would also say to you that family friendly is safe. Yes. And the information that we are being fed, or the misinformation that we are being fed,
is bullshit,
and it's dangerous. It's malpractice. Not family friendly at all.
Yes.
So and Newly Awakened says I'm sexy because I said naughty words.
Well, you go. I happen to be a good salesperson, so when somebody who doesn't want to agree with me is presented with a smooth, calm, and collected piece, they are less likely to block it out. And from what I've seen, however, that all being said, fuck it.
Yeah, and I apologize. I am passionate about what I'm trying to get across to people, because this stuff boils my blood that this nonsense is allowed to occur. So in a cool, calm, and collected way, let's deal with the hierarchy of evidence suggestion or hypothesis.
Well, mechanistic data is... See, here's what I don't understand. So mechanistic data is allegedly far down on the pyramid of evidence, or of a hierarchy of evidence. But here's what I don't get about that. You're telling me that we can duplicate in a laboratory setting, this thing does this thing, and yet we're supposed to ignore that mechanical data because of epidemiological clinical correlations? I don't understand what they're even trying to get at with this. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we know 100% that, correct me if I'm wrong, we know that sugar causes inflammation in the arterial walls, correct? It's one of the factors of inflammation in the body, yes?
Yeah.
And we know that cholesterol, what it does. I've heard you explain this several different times, regarding the acid. It spits out acid when sugar comes into contact with the arterial wall, it inflames, and then there's a bit of like a hydrogen peroxide, right? And then it covers that, and then the cholesterol comes and basically calcifies that area, correct?
Yeah.
Is that like a basic rough thing?
Sure.
So we have this mechanistic data in terms of like, we know how this thing works. Why is there even a debate at this point about cholesterol being dangerous or not dangerous? It doesn't make sense. Like, we have this thing completely figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Who's fucking this up?
Basically, what's happening, Drew, is that the science, I guess, has moved on in the last 20 years, as you would hope that it will have done. Many of the people who support the cholesterol heart disease hypothesis were trained, and I'm going to use the word indoctrinated rather than trained, because that's what they were. They were brainwashed 20 years and sometimes longer than that ago, and they were told cholesterol is bad, cholesterol causes heart disease, here is a drug that you must prescribe to people who have high cholesterol. It will reduce their risk of heart disease. Don't question it. If you do question it, we will strike you off. You will lose your job as a physician, basically. We cannot be challenged. We will not be challenged. Here is your money. Take the money, shut your mouth, and write the bloody script for the statins. Find the statin companies.
So it's just bought off, and it's saying, hey, we need to offer this new product because the world moves on, and we don't care that we know that this is the way it works. We're just going to, in a weird way, do statins help people that they do, right?
They do, and it's from a serendipitous and completely unplanned side effect of the statins. The statin drugs knock out or knock down the enzymatic ability to produce a number of things in your body. And that's overall, that's a very, very bad, very dangerous thing. Don't get me wrong here. Statins are a dangerous, contraindicated poison that should not only not be prescribed to anyone under any circumstances, they should be illegal, and the companies that produce them ought to be sued for billions and billions of dollars for peddling this poison, for peddling this genocide against people, because that's basically what it is. That said, one of the things that is knocked down by the taking of statin drugs is one of the pro-inflammatory pathways. So statins actually can, in certain circumstances, have an anti-inflammatory effect. And if there is any effect on heart disease in populations who take statins, and I say if, because the epidemiology is not clear on this, okay, the absolute change in risk is, again, 2/3 of 5/8 of 7/9. It's nothing. But let's just, for argument's sake, let's say there is a small increase in your lifespan on a statin. Sorry, not your lifespan. Let's say there is a small decrease in your risk of heart disease on a statin compared with not. If there is, it's because of anti-inflammatory effect. It's not to do with any effect on cholesterol, which is, actually not only not the cause, but actually if you knock your cholesterol down, you are actually promoting arteriosclerosis. You are promoting the problem. Anyway, so the statins do have the serendipitous thing. This is how, we go back to your original question, Drew, which was around, how is this debate even still going on? How is this allowed? And it's because there are so many degrees of freedom. There is so much fogginess. There are so many trees here that it's difficult to see the woods. And so people can take a cherry-picked position and say, here is the data that supports what I'm saying. And there are people who can cherry-pick the data that doesn't support that And on the strength of that, if I'm a clever spin doctor from a drug company who is also a scientist, because of course they pay scientists,
right?
I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Chief Executive of the statin companies, there is actually data both ways, mechanistic stuff both ways here. This is not a clear picture. There is muddiness in the waters here. Here's an idea. Why don't we put together this pyramid thing? We'll just arbitrarily make it up. We're not going to support it with any kind of empirical mechanistic stuff or any kind of studies of any kind. We're just going to arbitrarily say, here is a hierarchy. And we use the word hierarchy because people like the word hierarchy. And we'll put the mechanistic stuff lower down on this because it's foggy and it's not clear. Okay. And above that, we'll put a bunch of epidemiological studies, which we can argue are better because there is more statistical power. We have bigger sample sizes. We have more person years of follow-up, millions even. So that's unquestionable canonical truth now. We'll put that stuff forward as if it's the biblical stuff, and the actual science, which is explaining why things happen, not describing relationships of how things present themselves, not looking at what's associated with what. That's not science. That's just research. And research is valid in informing where science should go, but what does science do? Science explains phenomena. It says this occurs because here is the mechanism. Here is the underpinning, root cause of this, what we are observing here. Okay. An example of that, the Brownian motion thing that Einstein showed in one of his 3 papers in his fantastic year, where he basically provided the proof that atoms exist. It's like we know that any Brownian solution will behave in a certain way. We can observe that. We can say, look what happens if you stir it. Look what happens if you heat it. Look what happens if you cool it. Look what happens if you shoot it with radiation, whatever, and we can write that down. That's what happened. But if we don't know why, we know further ahead. That's not science. That's just observation. Okay. Science is explaining things, and that's what Einstein did. But he said, well, it's because the solution is made up of atoms. Fantastic. And then from there, they designed and put together quantum physics, which absolutely horrified Einstein, and he hated it with every fiber of his being for the rest of his life, even though actually it turns out that it's pretty much an irrefutable at this point. So, again, another long-winded sort of diatribe, but that's the kind of thing that we need to sort of understand and get our heads around, that
somebody wanted to
see. The hierarchy of evidence is something put together by somebody with an agenda. They want people to believe that the actual mechanistic underpinnings that say why things happen are less important than looking at what has happened. What are the outcomes?
Somebody wanted to pull this up.
If there you go. There's a good example there. So an analogy that I often use when I'm talking about this stuff to people is, how would you feel if you took your car to the mechanic and said, my car won't go, and the mechanic looked at the car and turned the key and it doesn't start, and the mechanic threw the keys back to you and said, you're right. Doesn't go. I agree with your observation. The car doesn't start. That'll be $50,000, thanks.
Right.
For my professional opinion. In other words, my observation, which agrees with your one. The car won't start. You're going to say, yeah, but you're a mechanic. You're supposed to actually know how this thing works and to be able to intervene in a way that's likely to actually change the outcome. I want the car to work. That's why I'm paying you as a mechanic. Okay. My job is I'm a science mechanic, if you like to think of it that way. Okay, so when people say to me, why do we get heart disease? If I'm a scientist, I'm going to say, well, it's because blah, 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 and here's how you intervene. If I'm a crackpot pseudoscientist, I'm going to say it doesn't matter why it happens. Here's a drug that stops it.
Right.
Take this drug.
Just go right to the end, and that's a big maybe to begin with. That's that's not proven, basically. By the way,
so here's your hierarchy of evidence on the screen. Lovely.
Somebody was asking to pull it up, so I thought that I would pull it up. Hopefully they can read it. Do we have like a bit of flashing going on your side? I'm getting epilepsy.
Yeah. My I'm sitting in front of my green screen, and my camera is. I think it's my camera that's adjusting backwards and forwards.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can do about that for now, but I could move to another place. But
it's interesting that it's not changing your face; it's just changing the background. But
yeah, I think it's the chroma key. The chroma key is actually turned off. Even I think it's the camera trying to adjust. It's actually like if I look at it, I just about burn my retinas out. It's a really bright green.
Yeah.
Thing. The camera's, I think, trying to adjust that back to a more palatable view. So in future, when I'm not using the green screen, I shall sit somewhere else. There you go.
Let's I'm gonna go back to the side-by-side view anyway. So
there we
go. All right. So we have talked a bit about mechanism. We've seen the hierarchy of BS. Now, when you hear something like Esselstyn's studies regarding turning cancer genes on and off, obvious, like he's an old school person in this movement. He's one of the only people that has science in quotations dating beyond 10 years ago. And this is something that I just find funny that I want to point out to you and the audience who isn't aware of this is a lot of the vegans that are out there, including Happy Healthy Vegan, these guys who've been vegan for 8+ years, they've been vegan a long time, right? Well, 8 years ago, half of this data didn't exist. So they like to pretend that they went vegan for the health and they did it based on good decisions and scientific bases. But in reality, they're actually outing themselves as non-scientifically minded because they went vegan before any of this data really existed in the hard books. I mean, World Health Organization wasn't agreeing with vegans more than 5 years ago, right? This is all new stuff. All these authoritative organizations like Harvard, even giving a nod to veganism, to even accept or acknowledge that it may even be healthy in the first place. Like this is all new stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to talk about that Esselstyn study. Like, what do you say to that? Like, are you clued up on that? Like, do you know the specifics of that? Because my understanding is that he was able to turn on and off cancer genes through giving rats animal proteins, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Okay.
So is that mechanistic or not?
This is a really good exercise in going through, working through some of these issues in terms of analyzing peer-reviewed published science. Okay. So the first observation I would make study is that the subjects of this study were how many human beings?
I actually don't know.
None. They're rats.
None. They're rats. Okay. Well, geez. Okay. Carnivore brain.
So
sorry, guys.
That's the end of that discussion. Okay. You are not a rat. I've been accused of being a rat, Drew, but I'm not one either.
Yes.
Neither is anybody I love a rat. I'm a scientist trying to support the health and longevity and happiness of human beings. Anytime I want to swap to rats, then that study would become valid. Until then, it's not. Secondly, anyone who claims that we know what all the genes are that are involved in the cause of cancer is lying to you. We don't know that. We know several genes that have been associated, is that word again? Associated with carcinogenesis, the development of cancer. We have observed in rats that various things can turn those genes on and off. That's not a new thing either. We've known for a long time that genes are always things that can be turned on and off in every organism. There are different things that turn different genes on and off in different organisms. That's why the rat model is completely invalid. So there's no actual surprise there, unless you're kind of a non-scientist, you're a layperson, which is what Esselstyn is banking on. He's banking on being able to impress you by saying, look, we understand all these genes. Okay, that's a lie. We don't. We can turn them on and off. Yes, that's true. In rats. Which he didn't say, obviously, because he didn't want to emphasize the fact that we're talking about small furry rodents with long tails and a history of causing the plague. So absolutely. Let me go on record here again, as I have done on many different places, including my own channel and others' channels. I have repeatedly said there is fairly good, fairly clear inference in the literature that changing from a standard Western or standard American diet to a whole foods plant-based diet, in the first 3 to 5 years of you doing that, that is likely to net you some health benefit. Why? Because the worst possible diet you can eat is the standard Western or standard American diet. A whole foods plant-based diet is preferable in the short term to the standard diet. A change of that kind will net you a regression in atherosclerosis heart disease. It will net you a reduction in your insulin problems, if you've got any, your insulin resistance. You can reverse type 2 diabetes. You might get remission of cancers under certain circumstances, and I could go on all day. So let's be clear. That diet, the whole foods plant-based diet, absolutely is better than a standard Western diet for the first 3 to 5 years, until those deficiency symptoms start to show up.
Right.
And then your health will then deteriorate again if you are somebody who lives in the middle of the standard distribution. If you're an outlier, if you have really good genes, you might last 10 years, 15 years, you might even last 20 years on a vegan diet without noticing any health decrement. You are an outlier in that case. The vast majority of the human population who go vegan within 3 to 5 years stop doing it because their health fails them. 84% within 5 years is the numbers. Okay, so if you want to look at correlation, you want to look at this is associated with that, let me tell you that one. Right. The vegan is associated with quitting the vegan diet to an 84% level within 5 years. Okay, it's also associated with remission of various health concerns caused by the standard Western or standard American diet.
Right.
That's the balanced view. That's the overall view. That said, the carnivorous diet will net you the same benefits over the standard diet that the whole foods plant-based diet will net you. And the reason that it will do that is the same. The cancer, the insulin resistance, the diabetes, the heart disease, all of it, all these inflammatory-based disorders, and that's what they are all caused by the same thing. And the thing that causes those diseases is a diet which is rich in both fats and carbohydrates.
Right.
Take one of those out of the diet, problem solved. Then the question becomes, of those two diets, the fat-free diet or the carb-free diet, which one is associated with long-term deficiencies, health decrement, and people quitting within 5 years?
We know.
And then what the vegans will say is, well, there's no science to back what you're saying about the carnivorous diet. To which the answer is, well, there's not really much science backing the vegan diet either, actually. Most of the studies that you're referring to are on vegetarians, not vegans.
Right.
they're on a bunch of cherry-picked data mostly anyway. A lot of it is even made up. Like, I mean, have you even heard this ridiculous one that they go on about the blue zones and they always talk about the Okinawans? Their diet was 60% pork in the last 100 years, for God's sake.
I'm gonna pull that up because I always reference that. People are always saying, well, the blue zones, and one of the healthiest blue zones. Well, yeah, well, it's not even a conspiracy. It's not even hard to prove this. I'm going to show you guys right now. The blue zones. Check this out, guys. You're going to love this if you haven't already seen this chart. Now, people love to talk about, I don't get into conspiracies at all, pretty much. And there's no need to. The reality is so easy to prove. Look at this. The Loma Linda. These are one of the healthiest blue zones, too. It says, this is right. This is bluezones.com, guys. This isn't, I'm not making this up. This is right from their website. 10% dairy, 1% fish, 4% meat and poultry. So 15% of their diet is animal products right off the website, bluezones.com. All right? Me and Bart aren't making this up. This is this is reality, and that's sometimes funnier. The reality is sometimes funnier than the stuff that we can make up, because the vegans are over here promoting but what about the Loma Linda vegans? They have like, I'm like, where's the information on that? There's no link here to the vegan. I can find vegan on here. There's no vegan on that page, guys. There's no vegan. There's no Control F vegan. Nothing. So I'm wondering where they're getting their, where they're getting that information from. It's pretty silly.
Bias.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, in your mind... Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that probably leads in quite well to the discussion about the N=2 observation that you're planning, in terms of we're looking at these diets.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting to you is that my understanding of the science leads me to an inescapable conclusion at this point, that being that just about every single health concern that we have in modern society has at its root cause inflammation. The thing that will cause inflammation, as sure as God made little green apples, is going to be the mixture of fats and carbohydrates. Take one of them out, and you're going to get a better result short term.
I do have a question for you on that, because I've heard you say that 80% of the cholesterol in your body is created by your body. Right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we have 80%, even if that 80% is inadequate over the long term, right? We have a low cholesterol number. We're not eating it. Let's say we're vegan. We're not consuming cholesterol. We have a low cholesterol number, which vegans, of course, are going to brag about. Now, why is the vegan diet, like, why aren't we seeing more vegans get heart attacks? Or maybe they are. Maybe that's just they're getting the same slow deterioration of it as everybody else, and we just don't really know it yet. And I have another specific question on this, but I will get into that regarding the triglyceride to HDL ratio and how important that is. And when we're talking about vegan arterial degeneration, even with the lack of fat in the diet, so they're not directly causing the issue with the fats and the carbs at the same time. So let's say they are doing a proper high carb, low fat diet, as most vegans think is optimal, like 10% or less of calories coming from carbohydrate. How much damage are they doing? Because we know that the sugar floating around that they're consuming on a regular basis is still going to cause issues, amongst other things, like maybe even fatty liver disease and all this other stuff. But let's just talk straight inflammation at this point. Like, we have the sugar in there, no doubt about it. There's tons of sugar floating around. And then we have 80% of the cholesterol in the body is still being made by the body. So they don't even need to consume cholesterol to have that still floating around. So how dangerous is that on its own?
The biggest concern for me on a vegan diet is the lack of bioavailable fat solubles. I'm talking about the micronutrients here. The various fat-soluble vitamins that are requisite for human health. That, combined with a lack of preformed branched chain amino acids, which are very, very useful in terms of your protein synthesis, that kind of thing. And I think that if someone is going to experience a problem on a vegan diet, it is going to be due to a deficiency in one of those things, more likely before they have an inflammatory issue.
Okay. It's just a matter of which one gets you first, basically, and it's probably going to be the deficiency rather than the arterial damage.
Correct. Yeah. And in fact, the evidence, I should say, inference is clear from the literature that people who swap from a standard diet to a vegan diet will get a regression in the atherosclerosis and the plaques that form the heart disease.
What if you're really good at supplementing, though, Bart?
Say that again?
What if you're a long-term vegan, committed to the animals and the ethics, and you've gotten really good at supplementing your way through life, and you've lasted 10, 15, 20 years,
right,
and you aren't showing signs of deficiency, let's say, nutritional deficiency, that's probably debatable, to be honest, but, and, the blood tests are...
So I think in that circumstance, I think that person will start to present with some of the evidences of a chronically high blood glucose level. I think they'll start developing insulin resistance issues. They'll start developing signs of diabetes type 2 and probably type 3. Which, for those that don't know, type 3 diabetes is actually Alzheimer's disease. Dementia will start to set in, McDougall.
Right. Jeez, that's a good...
Joel Kahn, dementia will start to set in.
Yeah.
Clear signs of, clear, obvious signs of that going on. And at least the case of McDougall, perhaps more debatable in the case of Joel Kahn, because it's very early stages, I think, with Joel Kahn. But anyone that wants to see what I'm talking about there, just have a look at my series of exchanges with Joel a couple of weeks ago. Interesting stuff. So I think, in that case, that person will start to present with those kind of things. Plus, they'll be showing signs of deficiency. Even if you do supplement, most of the supplements are not what they're cracked up to be. They don't actually do what they say on the tin. They're not bioavailable. They're not ideal.
They may be rancid, right? The omega, the fish acids, the fish oils.
Yep. I wouldn't take an omega-3 supplement myself. I just wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, for example.
Now, I had a question here for you, but I think I can answer it, and you might agree, is that I was going to ask you what you think the smoking gun against veganism, like what's your number one smoking gun argument against veganism? And if I had to guess what your answer would be, it is going to be the fat-soluble vitamins and the nutrition deficiencies that you will likely develop within about a 5-year span. It sounds like that's what is the main thing for you. Now,
I mean, if I was doing that, I would, but I would also caveat that by saying, let's not make out like I'm against veganism or against vegans. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to talk about the science as I understand it.
Okay.
Yes, let's just make that. Yeah.
Great. And how much do you think biology plays into that? Because, like, for me, the smoking gun against the veganism, against vegan diet, is when we really do break down our physiology, the way that our digestive system works. And I don't know how much you've gotten into this in your, your fields, but like, how is this even a debate when we do not have fermentation chambers? We do not have the ability to digest large quantities of plant cellulose. We cannot derive nutrition and energy efficiently from this type of food. So why is that even still a debate?
Because somebody with money paid somebody wearing a white coat to tell you that you are an obligate omnivore.
Right. Fair enough with me.
Because they were paid by someone who grows wheat, for example.
Okay.
And the people that own the wheat are the people that make the drugs that sort you out, the symptoms anyway, from eating the wheat.
So it's just a big big chain of people making money off of the backs of somebody else, taking money from one pocket and putting it in another pocket, basically. So how important do you think, how important do you rate the triglyceride to HDL ratio? And the reason I ask this, because I've broken down as a layperson vegan zombies blood tests, and he's a 20 plus year vegan. I don't even know if you know who this guy is, but he's a 100K subscriber channel, quite large subscribers. And he posted his blood tests recently, and he thought they were quite good. And his doctor told him, and this is the sad part, his doctor told him, hey, you need to start exercising every day. It will help your triglycerides out. And he said, I already work out every day. So he's already in the normal weight range. He's not overweight whatsoever. He already works out every day. He's already eating a vegan diet. So in his mind, he thinks that he's heart attack proof. However, when you look at his triglyceride to HDL ratio, it's 2.6. And 3.0 is said to be an extreme indicator of heart disease. So how important do you think this ratio is? Is it something that we should be looking at? Because vegans seem to be increasing their triglyceride to HDL ratio over time.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that on a plant-based diet you will have an issue with triglycerides is in that vegans tend to take in quite a bit of fructose, and the way that fructose is metabolized by the liver is in such a way that will lead to quite a large amount of triglyceride formation. And so you get this overplus of triglycerides, I guess. In terms of the ramifications of that, again, we're talking about an association. Again, we're going back to epidemiology, and that's the thing that says that triglycerides are an issue. There's no causal artifact that's been produced there that actually stands on its own 2 feet, in my humble opinion. I have seen evidence that would suggest that HDL to triglyceride ratio is probably not necessarily the thing it's beat up to be. It's a better predictor. It's a better associate to heart disease, but it's no more causal than the cholesterol overall argument. Okay, it's just a better predictor, a better model, a more.
It's a relatively better predictor.
Yeah.
So it goes from shit to less shit.
As to whether it causes the problem, let's not get away from the fact that at the root cause of heart disease, cancers, diabetes, all of it is inflammation. Deal with the inflammation, and the cholesterol is not a problem. The triglycerides are not a problem. Nothing will be a problem, because if you knock out the inflammation, you knock out the disease process at its root. So to me, that's where I'm focused. I'm focused on anti-inflammatory interventions, which, by the way, carnivory is a great one.
I agree. I think it's fantastic.
Very anti-inflammatory. All the notes are telling us that. And when the science catches up, as it will in the next 5-10 years, then the science will tell us that too.
Right.
But in the meantime, we have to rely on the anecdotes, because the carnivorous diet in human beings in modern times is a relatively new thing.
Right.
We haven't had time to get the science together, but it's happening. That's not to say carnivore is a new thing. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, just not in the last 100 or so, because some idiot in a white coat agreed to take some money from someone that had a lot of money to tell you a lie, basically.
Now, as far as this experiment goes, how should we approach this? We know that it's not in a scientific setting. We know that it's not in a laboratory. These two men couldn't be further apart. One is 50 years old, coming from 7 months of carnivory. He just recently lost 100 pounds. He's been mixing in intermittent fasting in order to get the results that he's gotten. You've got this young man who's been a vegan for 6 years, since he's been 13 years old. So we have the biggest variation in two individuals. But in MMA and in fighting, there's a saying. It says style makes fights. So it's not interesting to watch two people from the same the same study of martial arts to battle each other. You want to see like a wrestler versus a boxer. You want to see like this mishmash. So in terms of
you want to see me knock Richard Burgess the fuck out.
That would be an interesting fight. That really would be an interesting fight.
I would knock him out 3 times before he hit the floor.
But Richard knows karate.
Don't give a fuck.
He's also an archer and a
well, that won't help him in an
hentai specialist.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will knock him out 3 times before he hits the floor.
I am willing to see this. I would love to watch this. I'm a huge fight fan, and I would think it would be a great fight.
145 pounds, 5'6". There you go.
What do you guys think? Let us know if you want to see that.
You're too pussy to front up to an actual discussion with me about science. How about you get in the ring with me, pal, and I will knock you the fuck out. How's that?
That would be fantastic.
Cool.
Well, I mean, I don't want to see anybody be hurt, but I would like to see the fight just for research purposes.
Well, he will need to sign a disclaimer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what should we be looking to? Just, I mean, my goal is I'm going to pull these guys in tomorrow. We're going to do a live stream with them. We're going to get people, acclimated with their stories, their personalities, who they are, and then we're going to set them off into the world. And maybe Wednesday, Thursday your time would be them starting this diet change. And then 2 weeks in, I want to check in with them again. And then in a month's time, I want to check in with them again. And Dave Feldman has checked in and said that he is willing to help with blood tests.
Awesome.
So he wants to get them blood tested before and after. Now, what would you expect to see with blood tests before and after? Like, do you expect to see anything in 30 days, or what do you think?
30 days. I think that probably the most likely outcome is that your vegan participant will see the error of their ways and will stop being vegan and hopefully never go back to it. I think that's the most likely actual utility out of this N=1 observation study. I think that there will be changes in some of the blood lipids. I think that the vegan will have an increase in total cholesterol. They'll probably have an increase in LDL cholesterol in 30 days. They might have a slight increase in HDL as well. They will start to notice a change in the inflammatory situation. They'll probably start to see a vast improvement in their digestive function. They will see a vast decrease in their output of feces, both in terms of volume and frequency. The same can be said with what comes out of their rectum as well as out of their mouths, because they'll actually start to realize, whoops, we've been pushing the wrong barrow here for a number of years. I think your person who has been on a carnivorous diet that goes to your more vegan approach will notice inflammation, skin problems, digestive problems. Things will go south pretty quickly, I would say, for that person. Are you looking at doing CACs at all, or?
I mean, that would be fantastic, but I don't think that anything would develop over the course of 30 days.
No,
what do you
think? I
think?
never thought 30 days. It might be interesting just to get a gauge on, as a baseline as to what the CAC levels were for your two individuals. Again, you've got a 50-year-old versus a young person, so perhaps not so much anyway. Just wanted to respond to a couple of points there in the chat, just as I've been talking.
Sure, and I just want to say, Tess, I see that beautiful, wonderful donation. You're keeping these chats going, so I do appreciate that big time. And the floor is yours, Mr. K.
Good work, and keep up with the super chats too. And that's one of the ways that we YouTube creators can survive, I guess.
Absolutely.
Doing what we do. I don't know about Drew, but I don't have another job. I'm a YouTube creator now. That's my chosen profession. I do consultancy on Patreon. I also have some videos that are sort of slightly more scientific, higher level available on my Patreon. So if those who are interested that are not already subscribed want to go and check that out, please do. Anyway, let me respond to Klaus from Plant-Based News, who says, I seem very angry. I know that's not your accent, Klaus. I know you have a UK accent. I'm just taking the piss because I can. No, I'm not remotely angry. It's about presenting myself in a way where I can seem more human despite my sort of autistic tendencies. I like to portray a passion for what I'm saying. I like to be quite vehement in what I say. So yeah, it's not about an anger situation at all. Why would I be angry with Richard Burgess? He's a fool. He's a completely irrelevant fucktard, basically, who just happens to have a large YouTube following. Anytime he wants to engage with me in a scientific discussion, that'd be great. I know he's not going to, because he will be destroyed in such a debate. I've offered several times publicly to get into the ring with him. Anyone that knows anything about my background would know that's not a very good idea. And what I said before, I said it with the confidence that I said it, because, as I say, when I say I will knock him out 3 times before he hits the floor, I say that because that is what will happen. There are no two ways about it. So that's that one. Elise said she wanted to see that fight too, and I would be more than...
Elise, really?
Tell you what, Elise, I'll do it so long as you sit in the front row. Yeah, with pom-poms. Pom-poms. Yeah, no, I don't know. Those are the couple of comments I wanted to pick up on. Plant-Based News says the New Zealand Special Services will be my entourage. Yeah, no, I don't need anybody in my corner. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. I will contact you on Twitter, by the way. I realize that you're busy, and it's not possible for us to talk through here right now, but I will contact you after. And by the way, Mark Busquet, thank you for the $10 donation. Dude, thank you. I'm enjoying the interviews. It's easy when you have awesome guests like Bart K, who just show up on one day's notice. And it's awesome that you did this, because it was like my long shot dream to have you on today, because I knew that I was going to be interviewing these guys tomorrow. And I need the scientists to legitimize my operation here, guys. And it's not my operation. This is for YouTube. You won't see vegans trying to put something like this together. It's too dangerous for them. Like, I'm not worried about what results come of this experiment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care. Like, if the vegan has bad results and the carnivore guy has great results as a vegan, it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not losing anything by that. But a vegan, if they are proven wrong in that respect, they're going to have a million excuses for it. I won't have one excuse. If the carnivore guy's like, you know what, guys, I want to stay vegan. This is great. I'll say, okay, great. I'll have theories about what's going on, why he might be interested, but I'm not going to tell him that he's wrong. I'm not going to tell him not to do it. You know what I'm saying?
No, exactly. And I've always been the same, Drew. I'm like, actually, I don't give a fuck what anybody eats. I have no vested interest. I don't even, like, we've met now, we've talked, and you're a great person, and I'm sure that we could form a great friendship, but I don't know you from a bar of soap. I don't give a fuck what you eat.
Right.
Okay. Same, with any random person on the internet that wants to argue the toss with me about this. Like, I said, well, go and do what you want to do. I don't care. All I'm doing is presenting what the science tells me, and what I've taken from a 17, 18-year career, 20 years if you count my training period as well, I guess. It's just more than 20 now. God, that's a worry. People, this whole thing with the dietary debate, people just get so passionate about it. There's so much at stake. People get so, at the end of the day, do what you want to do. If you want to believe that eating plants is good for you and eating meat is bad for you, all power to you. You're wrong, but all power to you.
If there was no ethical argument attached to the plant-based argument whatsoever, these people would not give a shit. They would not have the additional willpower and gumption to fight this battle. They would just say, okay, like a carnivore. If you're a carnivore and you meet somebody who, when you go out to dinner with them and they they label themselves as a carnivore, and you see them eat a side of rice or salad, you're not going to be up in their face going, "What are you doing there, man? I thought you said you were a carnivore." Like, you couldn't give a shit. I haven't heard of another single carnivore putting down another carnivore for trying rice or trying fruit, or like, it's ridiculous.
Have you also noticed that
different story.
Carnivores don't need to tell you they're a carnivore within 3 minutes of meeting you?
Right. Exactly.
Klaus says your camp is just as entrenched, let's be honest, to which I'll say, yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
I mean,
my position is just as entrenched, absolutely.
Agreed. I did want to comment on... Shoot. Oh, I was going to ask you, in your extensive experience training people and getting involved in that, have you ever seen objectively a vegan athlete performing to the levels of those around them athletically, and or performing to their own athletic potential, at least beyond, a year or two? Because I know there's a lot of football players and these guys who dabble in the diets. They do it for 6 months, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Two-part question. Have I seen a vegan who hasn't been a vegan for too long performing in line with his or her peers? Yes, I have. Have I seen a vegan performing to their own potential? No. As a kind of industry insider, for those that don't know, I have 3 advanced research degrees, the first 2 of which are in exercise physiology. So exercise physiology, human performance, that kind of stuff at the elite athlete level. I've been involved in that with very, very high level, very high profile athletes for a number of years. So I know all the other guys that are working in that fairly small worldwide fraternity, and I can sort of get in contact with them and say, hey, for example, what's Mo Farah doing in his training? And I can get the answer. What's Jess Ennis doing? I can get the answer. What are the All Blacks doing? I can give you the answer, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is I've got some insight. And there are a number of athletes who are now strict carnivores who have not come out and said publicly that's the case. And the reason they haven't come out publicly and said I'm a carnivore is because they are kicking ass.
They don't want people to have the...
They don't want people to know what they're doing.
The edge. That's where the edge is. Then you don't give away your secrets.
Of course not. And when I say they're kicking the ass of these other athletes, I mean in all sorts of sports, up to and including ultra marathoners.
Well, doesn't Zach Bitter, Sean Baker's partner in crime on the show?
Yeah. He's one that has come out and said, I am an extremely low carb athlete. I do ultra marathons and I do them pretty damn well. So there is one example that I can talk about because he has come out publicly. Another one is Owen Franks, the All Black. A very different physiological challenge to play rugby than to run ultra marathons. I understand that, and he's at the highest level of his sport, and he's a carnivore. There are many others that I can't name because they haven't come out and said that's what I'm doing.
This is off topic, but I believe he's from New Zealand. He's a UFC fighter. He won last night. Volkanovski. He beat a legend last night. So hats off to him. And he was a rugby player, and he fights in 145 right now. But he was in his rugby days 205, and he's like 5'5". He's lost a lot of weight, but he maintains a very high level of muscle mass. And you bet your ass these guys are not vegans. If it's so funny to me, vegans think that diet is so optimal for health and performance, but they don't take into account that these people who are paid millions and millions of dollars, who are willing to do absolutely anything to get an edge on their opponent, you would think that they're all consuming a vegan diet as well, right? If we knew that veganism produced the most power, then why aren't they vegan? They're not. And you got guys like Klaus telling me the other day that if he does a couple handstand push-ups, that he gets jacked as hell. It's like, bro, I've been working out a long time, and I know that is so inaccurate. Even if you were eating meat, that wouldn't even work that way. So either you have insanely high-level genetics, where you respond instantly to doing a couple handstand push-ups, or you just don't actually know what you're talking about. And I'm sorry, but I think it's the latter.
Yeah. Klaus wants to know what I think of his peer-reviewed publication. I actually haven't read it, Klaus. I'll have a look at it and get back to you. I did suggest to you several times over several weeks that you might like to come on my channel and have a chat about things. That could be an opportunity. You have my email address.
You're going to ruin the plant-based news organization if he comes on your show. It's gonna.
Well, I mean, it's about having a discussion, isn't it? I mean, let's debate. I mean, a debate is actually a planned format with rules and time limits and an adjudicator and etc. So, you know, this whole we're going to have a debate online. That's not what you're doing. You're having an argument with somebody. Let's not call it a debate. A debate, right, as I said, has a structure and rules that people actually are required to follow. Do
you find that a lot of people aren't willing to go live and just chat? Because I'm finding that some people are very open and willing, and some people are. I don't think it has to do with like. Yeah, they just basically. I don't think that they want to get live in front of the camera. I don't think that they can look the camera in the eyes and look and speak live how we're doing now with any sort of confidence. You know, they're like. Yeah. They don't have the backbone or whatever it is to actually lie to people, or they don't have that confidence.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of that kind of confidence and also knowing your stuff to the level where you can be confident that it doesn't matter what someone throws at you, you can handle that.
Right.
And a lot of these people are not in that category. Like. A clown, for example, like Mike the vegan, he would never, I mean, he wouldn't have the ability to engage in a discussion backwards and forwards with someone like, for example, myself, any more than Richard Burgess would, because, you know, Richard Burgess would put up that chart showing that correlation, and I'd start asking him questions about it. And then there'd be a long delay between the answers while he's going like this to hear what his coach is saying.
He's getting patched in from Veg Source.
Yes. What did you say, Veg Source?
Gassy Gregor will be on the other line.
Yep. And he'll be going, I don't really know how to answer that one for you because I've never really actually been a doctor.
David Reynolds says, Drew, there's a vegan strongman, Patrick Baboumian. Do you think he can improve if he starts eating meat? Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think so. And people will say, well, he's big enough. He's strong enough. But that's not the point. The point is optimization. And if we want to understand what optimal health is and optimal performance is, you need to consider every food group that's available to us. And I think that there's just not even a debate anymore. It's really what it comes down to is vegans making the concession saying, well, I'm strong enough. I don't need to be that strong. Why do you need to be that strong? It's for the animals anyways. You know, because if it wasn't for the animals, they wouldn't be having this argument, because then it would just be, okay, well, eat whatever makes you the strongest. But now it's tied to this ethical argument where it makes you stronger, but at the cost of animal lives. Now they try and weigh this out and they say, is it worth it or not? And me personally, being the savage that I am, I say, yes, it is worth it. But, you know, this is just the way that I'm not willing to sacrifice even 1.1% of my health and my performance for animal lives. That's just the way it is, and I don't make any apologies for that. And Bart obviously doesn't either. He's a straight carnivore, proud of it. So,
well, 95%. Yeah, we're all human.
We're all human. I mean, I'm over here drinking a Diet Coke. I just had a sandwich, guys. That's all I could. I literally got off the last podcast. I worked out. I drove straight. I didn't even take a shower yet. I drove straight to get some food, and I was back, and I was late on the podcast, like stuffing my face.
Right,
anyway,
so there you go. When Drew fails, it's because he did it wrong.
So I have covered this. This is my little cheat sheet. I've already covered everything on my list that I would like to talk to Bart K about. So, Bart, if you have anything else you'd like to present, floor is yours. Audience, anybody'd like to ask Bart anything, we'll do what we can to get your questions answered.
Some Q&A. I mean, we can do that for a bit. My next appointment is not until 6:30 p.m. my time, which is in another 7.5 hours from now. I'll be talking to Elliot Overton.
Elliot Overton. Oh, the Oxalate Master.
That's him. But we're going to be talking about something different. that'll be on my channel sometime later. We're probably not going to do that live. We're going to pre-record that one. He's going to present something else, and that's going to be great. It's to do with EMF. It's kind of Jack Cruisey type stuff. So
you're awesome. A fan of grounding.
Yeah,
I've done my research on you, Bart K. I've been in all the little nooks and crannies.
All of them.
All of them. Ooh. I do want to tell you that. So this is interesting, and I thought about this yesterday. I don't know why, but yeah, grounding. So in Hawaii, we were grounded a lot. Like we basically, nobody wears shoes in Hawaii. You don't wear shoes. You don't even wear sandals most of the time, even when you walk through towns in some cases. But obviously I'm at the beach, I'm in the dirt, I'm in the ocean, and I felt fantastic when I would do these things. Don't get me wrong. It was a huge, without the ocean there, like cleansing my body or whatever that case is, I probably wouldn't have felt as good as I did while I was there. And I keep in mind, I was a vegan while I was there. Now that just goes to show you how bad the diet is. Even with all the nature helping you out, even with all the grounding helping you out, you still can't make the damn diet work.
No, you can't make it work because it doesn't work. It's nutritionally deficient.
It's square in a round hole.
You cannot get away from that. If you consume a diet that you are required to supplement to even stave off for a slightly longer period of years the problems that you'll still get, how can that be indicated? It's crazy. Clown Mazard wants to know what's the optimal diet for human beings. It's carnivore. There was a question there about how much plant should you have in your diet. Well, ideally none, as close to none as you can achieve. Is that indicated diet for humans at every stage of life? Yes, once you're weaned off mother's milk, that's the way it should be. Yep, pretty much that's the indicated diet. That's my opinion based on my reading of the science, my understanding of the physiology, and my my digging around in bodies. Yeah.
VC Smart asked you, Bart, what about an increase in insulin for carnivores long term? Our research about hyper responders having insulin elevated long term is not healthy, right?
Having an elevated insulin chronically is not a good thing. No, there are people that respond more readily than is the average. These are the hyper responders that are being referred to there. They have a particular set of genes that react to their particular environment in such a way as to make that more problematic for them. Absolutely. Again, it's just another point of which diet is the one that will cause the least insulin response, and it's carnivore.
Is there? Well, I don't want to get into can you overeat protein, and it's like that. We've there's a million videos about that, and I feel like. Man, I feel the most performance-oriented diet, I just want to throw this in there, the most performance-oriented diet that I've had in a long, long time is eating lots of beef, all carnivore basically, plus dairy to make sure that I'm at least hitting maintenance calories. So maintenance plus. That supercharges my muscles and my athletic performance. Like, I feel like I can basically work out every day. I can make gains every day. Every time I step up to the weights the next day, I'm feeling stronger and stronger and stronger. Huge pumps. And then, of course, sometimes I like to supplement with a little bit of carbohydrate. I do that. Like, what do you think about that, by the way? Like, for performance reasons, like maybe getting in some rice every 3 days or something like that. Like a clean carb source.
I'm aware that you're a fan of doing the carbing a fuck up, mate. And to be fair, I think it's because you're on the juice. Anyone that's bigger than me is on the juice. That's what's happening. Yeah. Carb the fuck up and go vegan. That's what you should do. No. In the case of highly performing athletes, people who are trying to get muscle gains and that kind of stuff, it can help short term, and you'll get away with it in terms of long-term negative effects more than someone who is a couch potato, for example. Is it necessary? No. Your body can and does manufacture all the carbs it requires.
Mm-hmm.
And if it requires more, it can actually manufacture more.
In the moment, by the way, because that's where I was getting confused. Like, I do have an understanding of like gluconeogenesis. I just don't know exactly how it works in terms of, like, let's say your glycogen stores are completely depleted, and then you go into a workout, but you've had excess protein and excess fat. So in other words, you are in a maintenance or above fed state or caloric state, not fed state. You could even be on a fast, right? But how rapid can your body respond in that moment to then fuel the muscles with glycogen?
Yeah. Okay. So gluconeogenesis is a slower process, obviously, than deriving glucose directly from a carbohydrate source, obviously. What I would say to you is if you have depleted glycogen and you go into a workout in a depleted state, that will compromise your exercise performance that day, necessarily by virtue of the energetics of the muscle contractions involved. And so it's kind of like a self-protecting thing that the body has. Obviously, it doesn't allow you, energetically, it's not possible for you to work at the same level that you would if your glycogen was fully replete. Over a period of 7, 10, 14 days, whatever it is, individual differences of consuming a diet containing no carbohydrates at all, even if you are performing at the highest possible level that you can, that will cause your gluconeogenic rate to go up to subsume the increased need for carbohydrates that as an athlete you have. So while you could quickly get glucose from carbohydrate food sources, if you're planned and you say, okay, here is my 2-week window, I'm not expecting to break any world records in this 2 weeks. I don't have any comps in this 2 weeks. I don't have a fight coming up in the next 2 weeks or whatever. Sometimes it's 3 weeks. As I say, individual differences, circumstantial stuff, whatever. Your body will adjust. The rate of gluconeogenesis is a demand-driven phenomenon, not really a supply-driven phenomenon. But your body will adapt over that, 14, 21 days, whatever it is, to a point where if you are regularly exercising intensely and causing glycogen depletion as you will, your body will go, okay, I need to provide more glucose the post-exercise period to replete the glycogen stores, and so the rate of gluconeogenesis from fats and proteins will go up. Basically.
So when you say demand-driven, you're saying your body, in the course of about 2 to 3 weeks, gets you into a state where after you've worked out, it then says, hey, this guy works out this hard for this hour. I need to replenish the glycogen stores to that level. And then that way, the next time you work out, you will then have those glycogen stores to burn.
Your body is very clever, and it has good circadian rhythms, and it has a good clock in it, and it can work out what you are doing and be more planned actually than even any human is in terms of planning, the way they do things. Your body goes, okay, for the last 2 weeks, he's been exercising around about this time of day at around about this kind of intensity, and your body knows that it's going to need some glucose, so it actually starts doing that because that's what you've been doing. It's phenomenal actually that your body is able to do that, but it can plan, it can think for itself, and it does. It's an amazing thing.
That's amazing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the myelin as well. That just popped into my head, the myelin sheaths. I've heard you talk about that with Bobby. I found that super fascinating because that was one of the things that I noted when I was vegan, especially even short term, even like right when I went vegan, like I just didn't have the power, even though the muscle mass was still intact from being, previous previous to veganism, I simply could not like flex the muscle as hard as I could not contract it the same intensity. Something about that, and I just didn't have that same like ability to 100% flex the muscle. Is that scientifically founded whatsoever? Or is that some placebo shit?
It could well be to do with a myelination issue. It's one of the issues that you will get from long-term veganism is an inability to what myelin is it insulates your nerve cells in such a way as to allow your brain to conduct nerve impulses to the furthest parts of your body quickly enough to be useful, basically, and to keep things well timed. One of the biggest issues about contracting muscles forcibly is timing the recruitment of multiple different muscle motor units within a given muscle mass at exactly the right time. And that can be affected very negatively by having poor myelination status. And for those that don't know, myelin is made directly from molecular cholesterol.
Jack McNaspany, Jack McAdamsby says Zach uses carbs openly during and before races. Yeah, I never said he didn't, and I think that's obvious. I mean, kind of like how me and Bart are just saying regarding this glycogen issue. If you're running 100 miles or something and you're burning, 20,000 calories in the course of 10 hours, like there's no conceivable way your body's going to be able to plan for that. And you couldn't even fill it with that much glycogen stores, even if your body was smart enough to fill up your glycogen stores 100% ahead of time. You are going to deplete those, and you're going to need to continually replete them. So you have a bunch of questions in here, Bart.
Say?
You have a bunch of questions in the chat. I should help you find.
What do we got?
Let's see. Somebody said, what can Bart say about epigenetics? Is it something people should learn about or not? Any books or anything people could read on? Only books I'm aware of is Joel Wallach. I've heard of that name, actually.
Epigenetics is an interesting area of study. It's, for those that don't know, epigenetics is about life hacks, really, things that people can do to increase the likelihood that certain genes will be turned on or turned off, really. A lot of people think that our genes are some kind of fait accompli. This is what your genes say, and that's what it will be. What people don't understand is that the way that you present yourself, what happens to you in your life and your health status and in every way, really, is a combination of what your genes are and how those genes are interacting with the environment in which they find themselves. In other words, being switched on or off. And that's what epigenetics is all about. I'm aware of that one book that was mentioned in the question. I don't know personally of other books on it, but I'm sure a judicious use of Google.
Debatable definition, Klaus says. Debatable definition.
I mean, okay, it was a parsimonious definition, Klaus. I'm trying to talk to the lay people who are watching. I want to keep it accessible to people. I understand that there are some, other ways of putting it. Look, if you've got a better one that you want to share with us, please, absolutely, offer us something better than what I just offered. That'd be great. What's my favorite type of meat? Beef, David?
Same.
Beef.
What kind of beef, to be specific? What's your favorite steak?
Any cut, really. I mean, I'm not a steak snob so much. I think it all tastes the same to me. It's all good stuff. What I am concerned about is that it's good New Zealand grass-fed.
What about caffeine? What's your take on caffeine?
I drink way too much coffee on a daily basis. Absolutely, it's an issue I'm looking at. I need to get it under control. This is my coffee cup here.
It's huge. You've seen your soup bowl, man.
Yeah, it's like, and I've had one today. I usually have about 5 of those during a day.
Wow.
Way too much. Way too much caffeine.
You got me beat, man. I do enjoy my energy drinks. I just enjoy it. I mean, is there something wrong with that? I think it's fun. I'm not like ravenous for them. If I don't have them, I could easily forget about them in a day. But some days I'm just like, you know what, that sounds fun right now and tasty and whatnot.
Hey, Klaus wants to tag in.
Okay, let's get him in here then.
Yo.
Let's go to this, and I'll do the back end magic.
Where's Klaus from Plant-Based News? Come on, Klaus. Tell us what epigenetics is, Klaus.
Klaus, give me your email through the chat. I think that we can do that, unless you have it. You can perhaps tag him in.
Salome drinks tea and coffee. Good.
Good, yep. Salome. Coffee may raise your trigs. Okay. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, Carnival, that trigs might not be the end all.
Also it can have effects on things like insulin. It can have effects on your catecholamines as well. It can cause adrenal fatigue. It's one of those. Coffee is one of those things that's hormetic, actually. I think. Klaus at plantbasednews.org. There you go.
He's been sent.
Sent. You've been summoned, Klaus.
Salome says, gold. Everything fucks you up a bit. You need some stuff. I agree. Like, if you're gonna have some vices in life, which is almost inevitable, choose wisely. Yeah. Like, if you're gonna choose a drug, choose weed. If you're gonna choose, a stimulant, choose coffee. Don't do coke. By cocaine I mean, not like
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Do the things that are less harmful. They have sort of like a built-in rev limiter to it, like you can only go so hard on weed or coffee or something like that.
All right.
Kona coffee is actually not that good, David Reynolds, I have to tell you. Well, people are very happy with that endorsement of vices. It's pretty funny.
It's hitting for midnight over there, Klaus.
He's a hard worker. He's obviously not vegan.
No, he can't possibly be. He must be doing it wrong.
We can't see him yet. Let me. I'm trying to wait till he gets in here so that we can. Whoa. Okay.
Ooh.
He can't see it. The invite.
Okay.
Let me send you a little bit. I can't tell what's on the screen or not.
Soap on Slope says, weed destroys my mental health. It's not safe for everyone. And that's true of absolutely just about any substance you could possibly care to name, Soap on Slope.
Right.
There is no one size fits all in terms of, that kind of thing. Everybody reacts a bit differently to just about everything.
Yes. Yeah. It's, and it changes throughout your lifetime too. By the way, like your sensitivity based on like how much you're doing or like your mental status at that time of life, like you can, in California, for instance, we have like the craziest weed now because it's been legal for so long. These guys are like, we have Klaus.
In California, for instance, we have like the craziest weed.
You don't say, Drew.
Legal for so long.
Sorry, I just turned off the, I was getting a little bit confused. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, I was watching and yeah, cool. How you guys doing?
Hey, Klaus. Good.
Woo. How you guys doing? Good to be talking.
Yes, it's good. So I hope you guys have you guys can probably make the thing full screen and then it will show you guys sort of going back and forth. It should work relatively well.
I'm just opening up Drew Morg, your YouTube, then I'm going to click on the link so I can see the live stream.
Okay, cool.
I'll turn it on to mute. Cool. Yeah, it's good to be here. What were you guys talking about? What do you want to ask any questions or what do you want to do?
I think that the thing that precipitated you coming on was you wanted to expand on or correct my definition of epigenetics.
Yeah, I feel like I was just being difficult, to be perfectly honest. And so you're basically saying that epigenetics is how lifestyle factors affect gene expression, correct?
Well, I mean, that was my very, very parsimonious description. I know there's a lot more involved in it than that. So, given that you've kind of brought that up, share with us what your
I'm immediately retreating and realizing that actually I was just being difficult. I think traditionally when epigenetics was coined, it was a little bit different than just how lifestyle factors affect gene expression. It was like, a good example would be how people who've been through Nazi Germany and in Auschwitz, the stress they encountered would change their genetics so much so that the genes that they pass down would be different. So it's a sort of cross between how lifestyle factors affect gene expression and genetics. But to be honest, I looked up the definition and I feel like it's morphed into what you described. I was just kind of being difficult.
Yeah, no, but what you're saying is absolutely right, Klaus. I think that it is good to consider when we say lifestyle factors. It's not necessarily just things that we might choose. A lifestyle factor can be something that's imposed upon us, like being in Auschwitz or living up there in the UK where you get a lot less direct sunlight, for example. And I've lived up there in the UK myself, so I know what it's like in terms of how that can affect your mental health as much as actually living in the UK itself can. My God. Yeah.
I actually meant, rather than just other things that you don't choose to do, I meant DNA methylation rather than just gene expression. But seriously, like, it was just something I learned at university, and I was literally just being difficult.
Sorry. Yes, I see what you mean. Talking about the actual passing of genes differentially to the next generation rather than just a turning on or off of a gene at a given time.
You got it, man. You got it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes.
But I feel like there's a lot more interesting things to discuss than that. But we can talk about that for however long if you want.
Offer up.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot now. I don't know, man. What are you guys talking about? One of the things that stood out about 10 minutes ago is when he said the science is going to completely change in 5 years. I thought that was a bit of a naive comment. I think it will take a lot longer for that to happen, to be honest.
Yeah. No, what I actually said, Klaus, was that it's going to take at least 5 years for the science to start to catch up, rather than it's going to completely change. As I say, I've been involved in science for 2 years now, including my training period. And, things have changed somewhat, but also things are very stuck in other ways as well. One of the things that my first professor said to me that's always stuck with me is that science changes one death at a time. And it's because of what I was talking about earlier, when once a scientist plants his flag in the ground or her flag in the ground and says this is how it is, they are now stuck with that for the entirety of their professional career. They're not able to.
I'm subscribed. I believe that as well. And this, I feel like you're pretty entrenched. It'll be naive of me to say I'm not somewhat entrenched. People like T. Colin Campbell and Neil Bernard say, I grew up in a dairy farm, now I've made the switch. But actually they're entrenched in the way they think as well. I feel like there's a huge element of that.
Yeah. Look, I'm obviously open to looking at any contrary inference, or what people would normally call evidence in the science, to refute any of the things that I say, and I'm more than happy to look at that stuff.
I feel like there's a lot of confusion because both sides do get really, really good results, at least anecdotally. Yes. So, and I guess from my limited understanding, like I haven't, you know a lot more about biochemistry than me. I'm sure you'll be able to take me down lots of sort of nutritional rabbit holes that I wouldn't be able to respond to. But
have you heard me talk about the Randall cycle and how that's what the problem is here?
Say that again.
Have you heard me talk about the Randall cycle and how?
No, you misheard me. Sorry, my accent. I just said both camps, the plant-based and the keto, are both getting really, really good results.
Yes.
I feel like I'm taking sides, I guess. Yeah, it'd be natural for me to say that because I do promote it so much. We have a lot more evidence, I feel, than you. So I feel like Yeah, man, the keto thing is.
So there's a couple of things there, Klaus. First of all, science doesn't produce evidence; it produces inference. So let's be really clear that what you get reading the literature is inference and not evidence. You are right. There's much more inference available to those who want to read about the vegan lifestyle, and the reason for that is because for the last 100 years or so, that's been the teaching, that's been the influence, that's where the money has gone.
I feel like there's more money. The pharmaceutical and the meat and dairy and egg industries and the whey protein industry, etc., have more money than any industries associated with the plant-based camp.
Well, okay, you can suggest that if you like, and that's fine. That's no skin off my nose. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is a reality that you and I both agree on, and that is that there is much more stuff, much more literature available to somebody who wants to read about veganism than someone who wants to read about the effects of carnivory on their health.
I disagree. Predominantly plant-based, you mean?
However you want to coin the term.
It's really important that, because one of the things I want to bring up going forward is how a lot of plant-based doctors take the vegan stance, when actually they should be very careful with their language and use words like predominantly plant-based. You look at the blue zones, you look at the Adventist studies, they're not doing vegan. They're doing like predominantly plant-based, right?
In fact, those blue zones are being grossly misrepresented.
Blue zones is interesting, man, because both camps use the blue zones to back up their point, which is fascinating when you think about it. I'm subscribed to Kip Anderson's perspective, which is that you could probably get away with eating a little bit of animal protein, some animal products in your diet, but of all the other factors that come into it, like, can we really justify that? That's kind of where I stand. And also, I agree with the keto thing. Like, I think it gets amazing results, probably because it mimics, you go into ketosis, right? And then it mimics some of the benefits you get from fasting, which are well recognized.
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. That's what I was talking about with the Randall cycle. The reason that both predominantly plant-based, in other words, low-fat, low animal protein diets, and high animal fat, high animal protein, low carbohydrate diets, the reason both those diets are better for your health than the standard diet is because the problem with the standard diet is the combination of fats and carbohydrates together.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed. So that's what the problem is.
And you say fat on its own is better than carbs on their own. And what my point back to that is, you're entitled to your view, and I would give a lot more credence to that if you could back it up with case control data, epidemiological data, mechanistic data. At the moment, and I guess the evolutionary side of it, just doesn't make sense from like an evolutionary point of view. At the moment, it's the last two that you can kind of dig into, but really, compared to the plant-based side, you're not really making a dent.
Well, I mean, it's not really a role to make a dent. I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking, there's a couple of factors there in what you're talking about. You've talked about, or you've spoken there about the evolutionary pathway. There are arguments on both sides of that one as well. Okay, you're talking about.
Yeah, man, I agree. I agree. I mean, I would give credibility to some people that say, like, stuff the animal products, but like maybe you consume insects or something from an evolutionary point of view and like an anatomy. That certainly makes sense for me. And I don't know what you guys think about that.
Sorry, about what?
Insects, man. Insects.
Obviously, humans have been eating insects for a long time, and they probably will, even more so going forward as other sources become problematic. This planet has too many things on it already, basically, and it's only going to get worse. So we're going to have to find alternate sources.
What about oysters in terms of the ethical side of it? Obviously, don't have a central nervous system, but well recognized as animal protein.
My particular politics on that, my particular view on the ethics of nutrition is that I have taken a view over, or I've taken study, I guess, over 20-something years into nutrition, physiology, pathophysiology, research methodology, statistics, inference, and all of it. And I put all of that stuff together, and I've come up with a view that says biologically, genetically, sociologically, and in any other sense you could possibly imagine, we have evolved. I'm not a creationist. We have evolved in a certain way to consume, ideally, certain foods. There is no ethics involved. Ethics has no part to play whatsoever in our dietary choices. They are mandated to us by our genes. And our genes are clear as to what we should eat.
There's loads of stuff I could say, man, but I'm really trying to stay with you. And if a result of that is me looking confused, then I really don't care, because this is all part of the discussion. That's more important than trying to look clever. But I'm just trying to stay with you. So your point is that ethics don't matter because evolution and what we're designed to eat out trumps everything else?
What I'm saying is our inheritance, our DNA, our bodies, our physiology, the fact that we are human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, is mandated upon us at the time of our birth. That is who we are.
I agree with that, by the way.
We have a genetic and physiological and sociological
what do you mean sociological? What do you mean by that?
It's how we are socialized. It's how our society has developed.
So like vegans have the trifecta, the healthy environment and the animals. You guys have what are your like main ones? The sociological, the evolution, like what are your like pillars?
So did you just say, correct me if I'm wrong, did you just say that in veganism you have health as one of your concerns?
I did, yeah, and you know that, man. You know what the vegans are about. You know,
I want to ask Klaus
you knew exactly
something.
what my point was.
Are you saying that vegans have good health? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but now you're changing the course of the debate, and I'm happy to go down that route.
Discussion.
But you cannot use the debate word with Bart. It's banned. It's banned.
Come in, bro. Where should we take this?
You can use the debate word, but I will correct you. I'm not having a debate with you.
It's cool, man. Like, I've got a lot of respect for you. I feel like one of the fascinating things about you is that you clearly know plant-based medicine better than 99% of plant-based doctors. And because of that, I guess you're pretty formidable to come up against. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of people will be bamboozled and just kind of confused if you're talking to a plant-based doctor because you know more about what they're trying to argue than they do.
I mean, at the end of the day, I have trained more doctors than most doctors have had hot feeds. So, you know, I get what you're saying there, and I get how that can be intimidating or whatever. The last thing I want to do is try and intimidate anybody except for one particular individual. But that's
I was just going to add that in, Bart. Thank you for commenting that.
You know, that's another story. He deserves it.
People saying Klaus is threatened. Just listen, ask questions, Klaus. That's what I'm doing, man.
So I've got a question for Klaus. So Klaus, you know, I've been watching your interviews for a while I was still vegan, while I was not vegan. I find it interesting that, like, when I'm looking at you ask these plant-based doctors these questions, I feel like you are almost not believing what they're saying some of the time. You have this look on your face where you ask them the question, and I feel like this is the first time that you've heard somebody say this to you. But you look.
I heard you say it the other day on the stream, man.
Yeah, you look as if you are not buying what they're saying because you're. I don't know if it's coming from your own personal experience where you're like, this. I'm asking for the public, but I've also experienced it myself. And then you ask them the question. Particularly in the Dr. Klopper interview.
Part of that is the trying to play devil's advocate. You know, nobody wants to see another fucking vegan channel where it's level 10 talk to another fucking vegan and don't ask them difficult questions. So, some of those questions will be nothing to do with anti-vegan. They'll just be stuff like to Dr. Greger, are you worried about your personal safety? Like, because, you do realize you're messing with an industry that's bigger than oil. There have been wars over oil, right? So I'm challenging him. I think what I'm challenging him there, I think what you're talking about is like when people say, for example, to Kim Williams, I said in our previous interview, you said that a ketogenic diet increases mortality. But if you look at the studies you referenced, they're not doing ketosis. They're not in ketosis. So you're making wild inferences. And yeah, for sure, man, that's not necessarily because I believe like a meat-based diet's good. I don't. I believe the opposite. But it's good to push people you're talking to.
So what was the data showing?
Like
what did he say? What was his response? Because I didn't catch that particular
one. Let me remember. So he said there was a curve. So the more low carb they went, the higher their mortality, right? So he said that obviously as you follow that, and that was a good response. It's like fair enough. But again, like another thing I said, go on.
Knowing what Bart and I have talked about previous in this episode of my show, we talk about like relative risk ratio being not as indicative of like good evidence as people would believe. So like a lot of these studies are actually talking about relative risk versus absolute risk, things like this. Are you familiar with this concept? And I feel like a lot of vegan doctors and a lot of vegans themselves will tout these studies and they don't even really understand the math going in and even the somewhat designed to fool you in the conclusion math that's going on there.
I think it's been on both sides, man. Like everybody's frame gaming to a certain extent. You're to a certain extent without realizing, maybe subconsciously, just listening to what Bart says and then using that as an imprint in your mind and getting ready for using that as a response in your next interview. In the same way, plant-based doctors come to my channel and might say things that they've heard 100 times from Dr. Bernard or Dr. Greger.
This is why I do what I do, because you can't, like, here's the thing. You can't debunk my experience. So like my experience as a 4.5-year vegan, laying out the data of exactly what I ate. I have chronometers going back 1.5 years into my last days as a vegan. Like these cannot be debunked. People can say it's anecdotal. People can say that you are an outlier on one way or the other. That's fine. I'm willing to hear all that. But the thing is, like, I can share that experience and it's set in stone. There's nothing that can, like, I know how I felt during that time and that is the way it is. You know what I mean? Like I'm not, if anything, I was placeboed on the vegan side. I would have wanted to stay vegan. So that's the thing I think a lot of current vegans are not considering, is that it's very strange to me that current vegans are up in arms against ex-vegans, making this assumption that they had something to gain by going not vegan. And even
the opposite. Yeah, for sure, man. The opposite. Look at Tim Sheaf. Look at what he gave up. The relationship
he gave up. Correct.
I'm on board with that, and I'm happy that you feel better.
Yeah.
But I feel like the placebo effect that you're talking about when you're on the vegan diet, I feel like that's the same on the carnivore diet. Like it's flip-flop.
Well, again, I'm not carnivore, so that needs to be said. Like I don't promote carnivore. What's
carnivore? What is carnivore?
Carnivore would technically be literally eating all meat, all animal products all the time, zero fiber, zero carbs. Other than what's included in
your high meat. Your high meat.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. Right. But I just want to say, like, I don't ever promote explicitly. Like Bart in this stream has said, carnivore is the best, and he does carnivore. Right. I don't say that. I think that's probably true, but I don't say that, and I don't promote that. What I am on the crusade against veganism. That is my channel's position. I do not think veganism is any good, and I also think that that's based on my experience, not necessarily based on science or research, because obviously I went vegan thinking that I had science and research on my side, and then that did not pan out long term, as well as for the vast majority of vegans that I knew in real life, long-term, real life, real vegans. And I think that's a very important thing. Like, I mean, you're in the UK, like you got shit weather there, like you're not around, tropical rainforest. I was. How many vegans do you really know in real life, like other than the people that you interview and that you talk to online? Are you actually in close contact with like many other vegans in your personal, close local community?
I live with a couple of vegans. Okay. We go out to dinner with the thing is, mate, it's difficult to unravel because let's say you got a vegan carrying around a little bit of extra weight or not necessarily doing that well. Like most vegans now aren't. There's tons of vegan processed foods. It's impossible to unravel and like actually work out what it is, why they're not doing very well. But
it's easy. It's because they're doing it wrong, isn't it, Klaus?
What's that?
The vegans that aren't doing well, it's because they're doing it wrong, isn't it, Klaus? Isn't that what it is?
I don't think I said that, but I guess if that's the implication of what I said and that's how it sounded, then
no, I'm saying that's the implication. I'm projecting to most vegans. I'm not pinning anything on you personally, Klaus. I'm saying that's the line that vegans will use in general to make a sweeping generalization.
I think I mean, if you look at vegans that are unhealthy, right? Let's be real here, right? If you're gonna look for a reason why they're unhealthy, it's probably because of the amount of processed food they're eating, and you know that as well. Think about that. If you took 10 vegans in the street and you looked at what they're eating, sugar, Coke, all of that shit, your argument is, well, part of the reason they're feeling good is because they're not eating enough meat, like. But how do you know, man? How do you know? Every fucking vegan I know is eating absolute shit.
Why is that the case? Why is the whole food plant-based diet so hard to do then if that's the optimal diet? And by the way, I did that diet and it actually produced the best digestion of all of the vegan variations that I did personally, but it also produced the worst athletic results that I had overall. So like what's your take on that? Because to me,
I feel really good when I do it, man. When I have whole food plant-based rice and beans and green smoothies and carrots as snacks and nuts and avocados and like all of that, I feel good.
Yeah, okay, Klaus, you're in your mid-20s maybe, if you're lucky?
Late 20s.
Okay, right. So you're a boy in terms of the whole physiological side of things. Wait till you're in your mid-40s. If you've been living that same sort of lifestyle for the next 20 years, come back to me and tell me you feel good, man, on that diet. And you will be an outlier.
Sure, I'm trying to work out. So I'm 28 now. I started it when I went bike touring for 5 months, and the only book I had was the China study, right? By 21, 22, by 2021, pretty much no animal. Thing is, what's the point in me sitting here and trying to say I'm healthy? Because I don't even think I am. I sit on my ass all day. Like, I'm not. I'm not comfortable talking about this because it doesn't validate anything. Like, I'm not even trying to say I'm healthy, man. I've got an unhealthy relationship with the projects I'm involved in, and I live a sedentary. That's not me making excuses about vegan diet. Whenever I do a vegan diet and other lifestyle factors, I feel really good.
Okay, right. So, I mean, Drew was talking about his crusade against veganism. I want to be clear that my crusade is not against veganism. My crusade is against misinformation. It's against people who promulgate misinformation to the public. And Klaus, you're guilty. Your site is guilty of promulgating misinformation to the public.
How we're propagating this, I'd love.
For a start, you give a platform to a clown like Michael Greger. Michael Greger should be struck off.
I mean, look.
I have called Michael Greger telling lies.
Michael Greger I can see Drew smiling. Love it, mate. You're loving this. This is on your channel. If Michael Greger is a clown, what is the person that seems to get joy out of saying they'd love to knock out a YouTuber and hit him 4 times before he hits the deck unconscious?
I said 3, and I meant 3.
You got to be specific, Klaus.
I said
no debate word, not 4 times, 3 times.
I said I will knock him out 3 times before he hits the floor. Not 4, 3.
Non-violence, bro.
It's a vegan embellishment.
Well, look, the only person in the world who I'm interested in knocking out 3 times before he hits the floor right now is Richard Burgess, and he's earned it.
Drew. 2 handstands today, man. 2 handstands today.
Oh, you're a beast. Listen, me saying I want to knock Richard Burgess out has got nothing to do with whether Michael Greger is a fucking clown or not.
Michael Greger is fascinating. Michael Greger,
fascinating man.
He's a charlatan. He's a clown. He's a fucking liar. I've caught
Michael Greger when I met him, right?
I heard Gregor's not a vegan, by the way.
On my fucking channel, Klaus. I have caught him telling lies about what are in the research publications on multiple occasions.
Do you feel like that? Do you feel like that is because he's just got a lot to take on and he misses the mark in a few places, or do you think it's a lack of credibility?
I think it's a lack of credibility. He stood up and said, "I have read every fucking single thing written in English language every year, so you don't have to." Now that's a lie before you even start. He hasn't done anything.
Whenever you try and summarize things into one or two sentences, it's obviously going to take a more reductionist form, and it's good, and then you're going to leave yourself open to criticisms like what you're doing now.
Minor errors is one thing. Total misrepresentation and lies are another thing. Have a look at the videos on my channel. I have caught lying. I have caught him lying, not making mistakes, not making minor mistakes, absolutely misrepresenting the content of research papers. Look at my videos, pal. I've done 3 or 4 of them.
If I went on your channel now, it would be antisocial. I'm meant to be doing the stream quickly and coherently.
Okay, I'll give you one example. He came on and made a video where he claimed and gave us a reference. Here's the reference. And he said that beef is more insulinogenic than white pasta, potatoes, and white rice.
Right, let me respond to that. Holt et al. 1997. Right, let's look at that. Insulin index of foods.
Oh, boy, here we go. Here we go with the insulin index. Bart, do I need to
overall, glucose and insulin scores were highly correlated. However, protein-rich foods and bakery products elicited insulin responses that were disproportionately higher than the glycemic responses. Boom.
Boom what? What do you mean boom?
Let me step in here. Klaus, there's been guys like Peter Attia and many other people, Greenfield, who are wearing continuous blood glucose monitoring devices while in ketosis, and when they do eat these foods you're talking about, beef, anything that's just pure protein and fat, their monitor doesn't even move. Paul Saladino has recently talked about this a lot.
Are they ketogenic diets? Are they completely low carb, right?
I don't know if they're doing that all. They say that they're not doing it all the time.
See, if you're on like less than 20 grams of carbs a day, then obviously eating beef is not going to have that kind of response.
But if you look right there, that proves that it's not the beef itself that is not the insulinogenic thing on its own. If there's other factors involved, like you just said, if you're ketogenic, then you're not going to have the same response. So how can it be the beef?
You could say the same for anything. It's always multifactorial. Like so this is what makes it so difficult.
Well, rice would move the needle though.
Klaus, when I make a statement about something Michael Greger has said, how is it that you read out something from a paper which has got nothing to do with the assertion I made, actually, whatsoever, and then suffix it with boom, and that's supposed to make some kind of point?
All right. Listen, mate. Listen. Just a little bit banter, probably fueled by the fact I was happy that I remembered to study, because I don't really... I'm not like Vegan Games.
Well, that was my next point, because you're telling me you haven't had time to even look at the video I'm talking about, or you don't want to go and do that. And you know exactly what the fucking study is, and you can bring it up straight away. Because you knew damn well that was the example I was going to use, didn't you?
Drew, step in, man. Let me know where you want us to go. I don't know what to say.
I'm happy to have some explosive arguments, but I also want to rein it in because I want to actually get somewhere with this. And I do have some like specific questions. I liked that I asked you about, how you feel like I said, when I see you interviewing people, these top level vegan brass. Well, okay, let's talk about results. Okay, and this isn't between just you and me. We're not comparing our results. That has nothing to do with this. What I mean by results, I'm talking like late year Dr. Greger, like the guy, and you don't even have to answer this. You're probably friends with these people. He doesn't look good. That
means, so let's break it down, right?
Sure.
That is based on the fact, probably, number one, he doesn't have hair. Number two, he wears glasses.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about hair. People dog on me because I have gray hair. That has nothing to do with it.
So what is it? Like the fact he looks tired? So actually, you know, would be a good response to this,
extremely skinny neck, no muscle mass in his shoulders whatsoever. You should have some muscle mass as a man, as a just a human. Like, to have no mass in the shoulders is like showing signs of sarcopenia. So That's a bold statement, but I stand by it. I mean, he looks like he's degenerating.
Explain what it was like when I first met the guy, and it only take about 20 seconds. So when I met the guy, I met him in central London in mid-afternoon. I'll be honest, mate, he didn't look great, right? And I spoke to him, and
Mick the vegan, pale skin as well. By the way, continue.
What's that?
Mick the vegan, pale skin, gray lips. Plenty of other vegans.
He's really tired, man, and he said that he was like, dude, I really wanted to make this happen, so I came, but I didn't sleep at all last night. And then in the lift up to where the cameras were set up, he was open about the fact he wasn't chatty because he was really, really tired, right?
Yeah, and
I was like, shit, is this going to go ahead? I was really nervous because, like, I saw it as a big opportunity, and I was just like, fuck, the interviews might be ruined because he's, clearly didn't get any sleep last night. He's jet lagged. He worked so hard, whatever it is.
Okay.
Turn the camera on, turn the lights on. He's just different man, and he was just great on camera. Videos got a million views. So going back to your point, is it genetics? Is it the fact that he works really hard and clearly doesn't sleep much? But I think the argument you're making is that it's the vegan diet, and I would say, how do you know it's
because all the vegan doctors have a very similar look. They all have the skinny pencil neck look. They all look like this, other than Garth Davis, who God knows what he's doing. The guy promotes, by the way, openly steroid users. I called them out, and I really hate to call it a U.S. Marine Corps guy because I have mad respect for the military, but this guy has pictures with gynecomastia on his nipples, and I called him out for it, and he responded to every single thing in my text besides the gynecomastia, this guy Ronnie that Garth Davis openly promotes. And by the way, these guys are all supplement pushers, so I don't trust anything Garth Davis says. He's clearly got his own agenda going on, but when I look at Dr. McDougall, Gregor, Joel Kahn, certainly the older guys too, Esselstyn, and these guys will be like, oh, they look great for their age. It's like, yeah, but they've been pencil necked for years. There's some type of degeneration going on with these men. And I'm a skinny guy, and I know what it's like to have that pencil neck. They look skinnier than me. They're just flat out degenerating.
Guys, when I go over to Esselstyn's farm and I meet Colin Campbell, and I just think in terms of the anecdotal, like first-hand experience, I'm just like, damn, they're in the 80s. They've worked really hard. Their mind's there. When they're talking, they're really
mind
hearing. Is there. Physically, how can I judge? Because they're like in the 80s. So I'm not used to if I spent all my time around 80-year-olds, I could compare. I don't have that experience.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's a physical.
I can just talk from my experience, man. Like
that's great, and I appreciate you being open about this. And I think I lost
a really bad relationship with food before I went plant-based, and now it's under control. Right. And whenever it's not under control, it's because I eat shit.
You seem like very fired up about that aspect, and I would like to touch on it more.
It's gonna be it could be the death of it, man. Imagine all the vegans get fat, and then all the studies that come out showing there's no difference between even standard American and vegan.
Well, I have a question here, a questionnaire here that I've devised. This is for vegans who want to come on the show, and nothing to be scared of. It's not to put you on the spot. But in fair play of the Gregor Daily Dozen, I call it the Daunting Dozen. It's 12 questions that I would ask, and I'm only going to ask you a couple of them if you want, that I think are like pertaining to you. So one of them, and you just said a very specific thing, is what specifically about? Oh, sorry. Yes. What specifically about consuming animal products disregarding ethical concerns you the most? Like, what is regarding animal products? Like, what do you think is the?
One of these vegans that is necessarily scared of them. I'm not. They don't freak me out. If people can be healthy with some animal products, then great. I don't judge. I just think from what I've seen, you don't need animal products to survive or thrive. So make the better choice. I love what Primal Edge Health brings up, and he makes the case that it's not just about animals versus plants. A lot more things come into it, like GMOs and is it local stuff like that. Great, it's great.
Okay, and
I don't find this shit daunting. Like the worst.
That's good. It's just a fun.
I don't know, and there's nothing anybody can say that I don't know what So go on, give me the next one. I'm genuinely interested to hear.
So if you had to design one optimal vegan diet, what would it look like?
The reason I pause is because there's this new personalized whole foods, plant-based intervention that's getting unprecedented results at a national institute in Europe in terms of diabetes remission. But I think it's a bit early for me to talk about. I'd rather let the results be published first in the Lancet, which is coming out soon, and then I'd love to talk about that based on the overall balance of evidence. Just
inference.
Sorry, say that again, man. You just cut me off.
Inference is the word you're looking for, not evidence, mate. Inference.
I need to start using inference myself.
I mean, you can say that about anything, though, I guess.
Oh, we're trying to be scientific here.
At some point, you need to use intuition, inference.
Okay, so right. in that vein, I'm with you, Klaus. That's why I want to know, like, what if you had to design the optimal vegan diet? What would it look like? Like, what do you? And this is not an experiment in like you providing data. Like, I'm more interested in what you think. Like, what do you think personally based on your results, your experience? Like, what do you think?
It's such an interesting question. You know why? Because, like, most species have a species-specific diet, right? But our species, it's complicated because of our evolution. So part of me thinks we're frugivores, but there's no way. I do not think that in our concrete jungle in the 21st century, that is the optimal diet. So I would just say whole plant foods, whatever that is.
Potatoes, beans, rice, fruits, if you can get them.
Fruit, veg, legumes, beans. So
in this case, like, would you put tofu in that regard? Do you think that's a whole food? Like, that's just literally, I'm just asking you.
It's difficult to answer that yes or no question because whole food versus processed is a spectrum.
Yeah, sure. But do you think it is? Like, I would include it, to be honest with you. Like, I would say tofu's cool, fine.
Fuck, I wouldn't touch tofu with a barge pole.
Well,
I just think that the fact I'm sitting here trying to give you an answer of where something lies in a continuum is just not, like, it's not my field of expertise, and I'm not going to be that guru that makes a decision.
No, that's my role. This is literally like as if we were. I know there's people watching, but this is like, So in my opinion, like, I'm going to tell you what I think is the optimal vegan diet. How about that?
Sure, man.
Okay, so if I had to devise a vegan diet right now, and I was gun to my head, forced to eat it, I would say whole food, plant-based, with the least amount of fiber possible. And yes, I would include tons of processed vegan proteins, including tofu and things like tempeh and stuff like that. Although I would do my best to get as minimal fiber as possible. And I would drink a ton of water, and hopefully my digestion would be okay. That's what I would like.
The mainstream narrative is definitely eat more fiber, but within the plant-based sphere, I feel like the pendulum needs to swing the other way a little bit. And people speaking out about that. People subscribe to what you're saying.
Right. Well, I look at it in an overall perspective. Like, could I make some gains eating that way in terms of like have some athletic performance? Yes. Is that the most important thing to me? No. I think health is the most important thing. But like
the gains thing you said, you've criticized me since the other night when I commented about the handstand thing.
Yes.
And I feel like it's important just to clarify what I meant. It's just that from my personal experience and seeing other people.
By the way, you have a much more broad and like thick build than like. I would say that you're at least in the category of mesomorph in terms of like stature. Like, I've not actually looked at you until right now, but like you have a thicker bone structure. Like, you would probably be able to make a lot of gains if you actually were on a real regimen.
That's what I was saying. That's all I was saying. It does not matter whether I eat rice or beans or tofu and beans or tofu and rice and meat. I've done it all, meat and rice and just meat.
Right.
It just doesn't really necessarily make a difference. If I train a lot, then I get stronger. If I eat unprocessed a lot, I get leaner. Like, and I feel like you have a more reductionist view on this, and you sort of overcomplicate it in many ways.
Well, like, no, because
let me give you an example. Give you an example. A couple of months ago, I had been talking about how when you were vegan, you did lots of cycling, but your brother had a little bit of animal protein, and he was like better than you. Dude, like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Too many factors, too many things to control. just fucking bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
No, my brother just genetically he's always had much stronger, much bigger legs than me. But
right, you made my points. It's nothing to do with nutrition.
If he was vegan, he would obviously perform at a worse level than he is right now. Like without doing any type of exercising whatsoever, like he's still going to have a much larger muscle mass in his legs to start from than I would ever have. But comparing my vegan leg power to my omnivore leg power is two totally different things. Like I'm able to make gains at a faster pace. I'm able to maintain a much higher muscle mass ratio while I'm consuming animal foods, specifically higher protein. Sure, if I ate 60 grams of animal foods a day and I just filled in the rest with, I don't even know, like something that had low calorie, vegetables or something, I wouldn't make gains either. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, we know why animal foods work.
That has a lot to do with the fact that your body type is different to some people.
Sure, but I'm also comparing myself versus myself. That's something that a lot of vegans don't have that experience with. Like I know how I gain
your own control, basically.
Right. Yeah, I know how I perform on animal foods, and I know how I perform on vegan. And I gave veganism the longest shot ever. Like I did everything I could. I controlled for everything. In certain cases, people are like, "Oh, you jumped around." No, I did everything. I did whole food plant-based for 6 months. I did this for 6 months. I did high protein for a year and plus. I did raw till 4 for 2 full years. And I had good blood tests, by the way. Great blood tests. High testosterone. It didn't fucking matter. Injuries mounted up that didn't heal. Ligaments and bones in general, the wrists felt smaller. This is just my opinion on that. My gut got fatter for no reason. Like I show my little soft front side and it's finally going away now that I'm getting those hormones in check. So like just...
How difficult is it to...
libido, by the way? Couldn't get a boner. What?
How difficult is it to train in ketosis?
In ketosis, I wouldn't know because I've never shot for ketosis and I'm not trying to be like technical about it. I'm saying that when
I get your point. I get your experience. I appreciate that perspective. I'm not going to sit here and try and...
No, carnivore, I can tell you though. Carnivore is fantastic, especially if I'm in a caloric maintenance or surplus. If I'm in a deficit and I still want to feel good during my workouts, I need to consume some carbohydrates. At least that's how I feel about it right now. Now, Bart did say something earlier, which enlightened me a little bit. It takes 2 to 3 weeks of doing 100% carnivore to even start adapting to being able to have gluconeogenesis make up for the fact that you're not consuming carbohydrates. So that's something I might experiment with in the future. And maybe 100% carnivore will be the way to go at that point. But that's not what I've experimented with so far. I have done 40 days of carnivore. That's the strictest I did carnivore. And I did make muscular progress. I actually have a video on it on my channel. And I actually was losing weight while gaining strength at that time. And I proved it in the video. I showed pull-up reps increase. Yeah, anyway.
Nice, man, nice. I'm just wondering, because whenever I've tried to get into ketosis, I just find it really difficult.
On a plant-based side.
Really difficult.
Klaus, I'm going to be posting a video this week about ketosis more broadly than a lot of other people have covered online. There are reasons why being in ketosis will interfere with your ability to train at full intensity. There is this obsession, if you like, with ketogenesis in the keto community. It becomes the thing that they actually shoot for, they aim for. It becomes the whole raison d'etre, basically. And it's nonsense. Okay, you don't need to shoot for ketosis. You don't need ketones. Ketones aren't the point. Ketones are the result of ketosis. They're not something to aim for in and of their own.
That's news to me, because I would have thought trying to have a little bit of carbs and stay low carb is harder than just staying in ketosis and then you blunt your appetite that way and then you're able to stay in it. That's the way I thought it worked. So the first 2 or 3 days,
that is one argument. Yeah, that is one argument.
That is easy, and so like I've considered doing a kind of vegan keto style thing just to know what it feels like to be in ketosis, because I have to admit, like, I'm making arguments against ketogenic diets, and I've never actually personally firsthand experienced what it feels like. So you've got lots of plant-based doctors that criticize it by saying like you overeat and all this other stuff, but they don't really give any credence to the fact that if you are in ketosis, it changes your appetite and the way you view food And actually, I just want to try it, man. I'm actually genuinely interested to see what it feels like. I said to Tim Sheaf, maybe a month before he came out as being non-vegan, I remember I said to him, I tried to fast for a day, and I got to like 12 hours in, and I just pigged out on some oatmeal. I just couldn't do it, man. Couldn't do it.
So, just purely out of interest, what are the arguments that you like to make against a ketogenic diet?
Oh, damn, I wish I had my notes. I made 5 points, which I saw somebody make on Facebook and thought they were really, really brilliant.
Right.
But I mean, firstly, the positives are that, I mean, just from my point of view, it makes sense that you get some kind of relief or you start to feel better, because everybody knows that fasting has beneficial effects, physiological effects, and you kind of, in my mind, mimic that process by going on a keto diet, but you're able to sustain that ketogenic state.
So yeah, okay. So that's a common misconception, actually. Ketogenesis is nothing remotely similar to starvation or fasting. So that's just something that they put forward that is a misdirect, really.
I feel like you just conflated starving and fasting, which are two very different things.
Yeah, probably slightly. But I mean, again, ketogenesis doesn't mimic fasting any more than it mimics starvation. It's a physiological state that the body enters into because of certain genes being turned on for certain environmental reasons. It has a result, the result being ketones, among other things, but it occurs for a very specific biological.
I really disagree. My gut feeling is telling me that if you're on a ketogenic diet, part of the reason you get some kind of benefit is because there's a correlation between why you get the benefit there and why you get benefits when you're fasting.
Okay, well, tell us what you want to disagree. You want to say, this is what I feel. Well, tell us why. Give us the underpinnings.
This is my intuition. I'm like, they're so similar. They're both like.
You're saying they're similar because one's running off of. They're both running off fat. They're both running off fat, basically, body fat or fat.
Even like Sverridge's friend who met me in London agreed, but he said, and he made an interesting point, which I thought was interesting. He said the difference is that rather than fasting, you can't do it for more than 42 days, whereas if you're on a carnivore or ketogenic diet, it provides a prolonged way to keep on in the ketogenic state.
Okay. Did you see my John? You had 120 days, Klaus?
I know you agree. I just feel like I'm not articulating it in a way that you fully understand the point, but I do actually think you agree.
Have you seen my interview with Big John a few weeks ago? John hasn't eaten for 120 days, Klaus, at all, any food. So you're sitting there saying you can't fast for more than 42. Tell that to Big John. Big John's now on 120 something days.
Well, as in you can't, as in the general,
as in no food.
The general consensus within the fasting community is that after 42 days you go into starvation mode, right? And I don't know about this one example.
Okay, so something's right because there's a consensus around it. Is that what we're saying?
So what? Just develop your point a bit and explain. Like I'm the first person.
That point was standalone. You said you can't fast for more than 45 days, and I'm saying yes, you can, Klaus. Here's an example of someone who's doing it.
So maybe I should have rephrased it to the general consensus is that after 42 or 45 days of fasting, it's probably not the best idea. I mean, there'll be a lot of drawbacks, whether that's 200 days, 10 years. Like 10 days, whatever it is, at some point, there must be a point where fasting becomes unhealthy, right?
When you're completely out of fat stores, yes.
Yes, and I'm just saying, being on a carnivore or ketogenic diet means it's prolonged because you're getting calories in from fat. So rather than eating up your body, you're able to stay in that state for longer because you're able to eat whatever foods you're eating, like that, nuts or meat, or whatever it is.
Not sure what the point is. Sorry, I'm a little bit lost on what the thread of the point is.
Drew, do you understand the point I'm making?
You're saying that ketosis is basically mimicking a fasting state type of thing because you're feeding it because your body has essentially started to run on fat. So by you putting in more fat to the fuel tank, it's just using that fat to feed rather than your body fat. That's kind of what you're saying.
All I'm trying to say.
Right. So my point is that that's nothing remotely similar to fasting.
Right.
Fasting is not consuming any food.
Right, because a fed state, by the way, Klaus, as we know it, even when you consume fat, it's still going to produce some sort of insulinogenic response. So, like, right there, you're in a fed state. You're not in a fasted state, no matter by default.
Obviously, they're different.
Right.
But I'm saying there are probably some similarities. At least they're more similar than high carb versus low carb.
What I'm wondering is what is the consensus saying happens after the 42-day deadline? Like, what makes that the last day you can do it? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just wondering what the community says. Obviously, there's tons of people fasting for longer than 42 days, especially in like extremely obese patients. I'm sure that's why this guy is doing that, right, Bart? Why is he fasting for 120 days?
Yeah, he was 530 pound.
Right. So that guy can fast for a year probably, and
he probably could.
And he's just going and going and going. And that's incredible. I mean, do you think he's in any danger, by the way, Bart? Like, is there any?
None at all. He's as bright as a button. He's as sharp as a tack. His meds his bloods are all fine. His doctor's perfectly happy with his progress. He's feeling better than he's felt ever in his life. In fact, he thinks he's got his life back because he's down to sort of 350 from over 500, and his goal is to stop when he's 195.
I do have a question for you, Bart. Now I'm getting down to like under 10% body fat. When I'm fasting, even when I'm doing intermittent fasting on a daily basis, and I'm pushing the clock like 2, 3, 4 p.m., even though I'm not on a ketogenic diet, I am not 100% carnivore. However, I'm probably pretty well fat adapted considering I only eat 2 meals a day. I am eating a high amount of animal foods. Maybe 10% of my calories are coming from carbs. I would assume I'm pretty well fat adapted with that regime.
Yeah, you'd be pretty good.
So what's happening in my body now that I'm I'm 10% probably or a little bit under? Like, what do you think is going on that's saying, like, that's making me a little bit dizzy, let's say, after about 2, 3 p.m.? Like, you know, if I don't eat, by the way. If I eat, I'm totally fine. Everything's good. But
there could be a number of things behind that, Drew. But I mean,
I think it's electrolytes, by the way. But
it could well be electrolytes. It could be that your body is now down to, as you say, under 10%. So your body's trying to sort of,
it's like, hey, bro, you're done.
Protect that last little bit for a rainy day.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it could be a number of things.
Because I just try and put myself in that position of like fasting for even 5 days right now, and I would just imagine being not hungry, but exceptionally like spacey and delusional. Basically, like I wouldn't be connected.
Also, you know, be it a low amount, that the sort of 10% or so of carbs could well be having a negative effect on your ability to beat oxidized fats.
Okay,
guys, just full transparency. I'm messaging Vegan Revolution to see if he's got any questions.
Sure.
Vegan Revolution, funny
on the old Facebook.
Get the Antifa.
Hey mate, how are you doing? Know you've been trying to get on. Any suggestions?
We'll just turn it into a right shit show. Yeah, when I do almost all carnivore, like no carbs for days and days, I noticed that on day 3 or 4, I'm actually less interested in eating carbohydrates. Like I beat the carb sensation, the carb hunger, and it does make it even easier. Like I find myself actually less hungry in general. So that could be the case. And I'm sure like you might agree with that, Bart, is like, even though I'm down at that 10, 12% body fat, 8 to 12% body fat, somewhere in there, which is quite low just in general, I'd say, like that I could probably not eat any carbs for the next 3 days. And I would imagine that on day 3 or 4, I would be at a point where I'd be like, I could basically eat one big steak lunch and I could almost go the rest of the day and not even be interested in food. I don't know how that would affect my, I don't know how that would affect my mental state. I almost want to try it, but getting down to the end here, it's like, I don't even know what to call it, but basically I pull the cord on one end and I have to balance it out on the other end. I'm just constantly seesawing back and forth, trying to like whittle down this last little bit of fat. It's not easy.
Go carnivore. 100%. Get the plants out of your diet.
Get the overt fats out of your diet, man. Go McDougall style.
Go McDougall. Klaus. I'm actually infiltrating the carnivore community. It's going to be a big twist in the end. I'm going back to veganism, and I'm actually taking everybody with me. It's going to be the biggest double cross that you've ever seen in your life.
The thing is, I hope you guys can appreciate. I'm really playing to the stereotypes at the moment, and I can see both sides, and like, you know, I have developed plant-based news and stuff, but ultimately it could be plant-based, could be anything related to gardening or something. And in all honesty, I'm really open-minded and up for listening to new data and new viewpoints.
That being the case, Klaus, why don't you change the name of the site to something more around nutrition news and less, you know, taking a position, and invite people like me on the channel at the same time as your good friend Michael Greger, and let's have a chat between myself and Michael Greger. Why don't you sort that out? People would love it.
That's in the current remit. That's not something that I wouldn't necessarily do at the moment. Like,
well, let's get it done.
You know, featured debates between Davis and...
No, I don't want to debate anybody. I want to discuss with Michael Greger why he thinks he can come online and tell lies to people.
Are you talking about the glycemic, the
That's
glucose?
one example of many.
Right.
Where he has said something.
So I've got a great idea. Listen, I'm going to a couple of conferences this year, right? And I'm in the process of brainstorming content. The problem I have at the moment is I've covered the basic stuff about whole food plant-based nutrition. I want to go really deep. I want to ask controversial stuff. So if you draw up a list of the controversial things that he's claimed and said, I will be happy to ask him.
Okay, done.
And one of those is going to be about nuts. Vegan panels criticized his interpretation of the nut data, so I'm going to talk about that. But
the nut data. Klaus, I have another question for you from my daunting dozen.
Yeah.
If you had to estimate how many people who go vegan end up staying vegan for the rest of their life, and what is the main reason they quit?
We've got that data. 82% of people quit being vegan. I can't remember the time frames, but
that's within 5 years, right?
Could be. Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
What's the attached question?
Why?
What's the main reason they do quit?
So social has to be a big one, right?
Do you really think that social plays a huge part after 1 year of going vegan, though? Because, like, I can honestly say that people who go vegan, once they beat that first year, they're no longer concerned with, like, social pressure about it, or, like, at that point, they've kind of got it worked out, like, where they're going to eat, how they eat. Or do you think it's something that...
Yeah, but they become less sort of puritanical. You know, if somebody saw Gary Yourofsky's speech or Neil Bernard talking about the dairy industry, and they're really passionate, and they tell people, and then after a year or two, they realize that actually veganism is just one component, and it's not such a black and white thing. And then they kind of, and like they get maybe bored of being meticulous at every single meal, and then they cave in, and then they get married to somebody that eats meat, and then it's just like, you know, that's probably reason.
So why are they all coming online and saying I'm quitting veganism because it's fucked up my health?
Well, so there's been Ravana, there's been Tim Sheaf, there's been what's your girlfriend called? Is it Elise Raw Alignment? Yeah. There's been the English guy, Jacko.
Yeah.
There's 4. By the way, Ravana is I haven't got confirmation on this. From what I heard about a month ago, she's trying whole food plant-based again.
Anybody with the most basic cursory searching skills can go to YouTube and find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos of ex-vegans saying it fucked up my health.
I do get a lot of people on a daily basis, Klaus, messaging me, by the way. Moon and Rock as well, somebody pointed out.
Okay, I haven't seen a single video saying it's because I married somebody.
I really wanted to meet that guy. Me and him seem so different. I was actually interested. I'm really interested in his personality. Like, he's part of the Hawaii crew with you, right?
Evan Rock?
Yeah.
Yeah, he lives in Hawaii still.
And what's happening with his farm? Is there still fruit there?
Of course, yeah. That place produces a shitload of fruit. durian, bananas, every variety of banana you can think of. Like
Cool.
they have all kinds of exotic fruits there. They have all kinds of stuff.
And what did you think of him doing like 1,000 calories a day and under eating and like, what do you think of Tim Sheaf not doing the one thing that everybody in the medical field says vegans have to do?
Which is what? What are you talking? What are you referring to?
Man, B12.
B12. Oh, I mean, look at Ted Carr though. Ted Carr gets his B12 levels checked and he's fine, and he doesn't take B12. He hasn't for years, and he's a fruitarian.
But there's a difference between the odd person being able to not
okay, so he's the outlier.
B12. Yeah, there's a difference there, man.
Sure.
So do you think there's any correlation between his failure on a plant-based diet and his what he did, whether that's throwing up after eating occasionally, not supplementing B12, being into this anti-science stuff, like sun gazing, flat earth, all of this? Do you see there's any correlation between that kind of personality? You see it in Evan Rock and these other people quite a lot. Orthorexia a little bit as well, just weird kind of behavior, like there's a lot I respect about them, but do you see any correlation between that and them not doing very well on a plant-based diet?
I don't think the body cares how weird you are. I think it
does when it comes to like B12, man, and it does when it comes to
the thing with Evan though is Evan supplemented everything. Evan was a huge supplementer. That's the difference. And I know of other people who are or were very big supplementing vegans, and they are no longer vegan. Like I'm the B12 thing. Maybe if you go 10 years or something, 20 years without supplementing it, you can have an issue. But these guys that are doing it that are not taking it for 5 years, I don't think they're developing any mental deficiencies from not taking B12. I really don't. Like, I personally don't think I was deficient on anything when I left the vegan diet. I say that openly. I was not deficient in anything. It fucked my teeth up. It fucked my libido up.
What nutrients that you got from meat then that you feel like maybe better?
As for muscle, 100% the leucine in the meat, the amino acid leucine. That's very key, which you'll notice that every vegan protein powder is loaded with leucine specifically, because that's the way that you activate mTOR. That's the way that you activate muscle protein synthesis. Like, leucine is the one amino acid mostly associated with actually making gains. So that's one thing. As far as how I feel great getting the fiber out of my diet, getting the carbs out of my diet, no longer running on carbohydrates as a primary source of fuel. So I'm not crashing into my next meal. As you said, if you try to go 12 hours, you're like fucking ravenous. You need to get that. That's because ghrelin is pumping in your stomach and you're like, that sound that the stomach makes. Our stomachs don't make that sound.
You feel like I'm quite ghrelin dependent.
Fuck yeah. I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. And you get to that next meal and you're like, oh, that stomach, that wrenching hunger. That does not happen.
You can really carb up and do some damage in the day without eating for like 8 hours. Like, if you've got a busy day, sometimes I just eat a shit ton and then I'm decent.
No, that was my experience as well. I ate. That's why I don't feel like I was necessarily deficient. I ate a lot. That, if anything, a vegan that comes through can say you ate too much to me, because I actually chronometered my calories. I ate at a minimum 2,500 calories a day, other than my 30-day juice fast. You motherfuckers, I did 2,500 to 3,500 calories a day for nearly every single day of my vegan 4.5 years. I really did, and I chronometered some of those.
Available to you though, Drew.
No, and that's the thing, is that the digestion was terrible the entire time. Like, the digestion was bad from pretty much day one. I even did a 1-year video where I try to do an unbiased review of veganism. And I even talk about it in that video. I say my digestion, I'm still trying to work out my digestion. So imagine that. 1 year in, I'm still trying to fix my digestion. 2 years in, I'm still trying to figure out my digestion. That's why I did a 30-day juice fast. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I did these things on purpose.
It's that, it's not so much what nutrients do you get on an animal-based diet that are missing. I mean, because that's easy. It's the fat-based, the fat-soluble ones are the big ones that are missing from the vegan diet.
Like, we can name them, by the way, Klaus. Sorry, I don't want to be...
The problem here is not so much, although that's very important. The reason that people's health improves when they get off the vegan diet and get onto a carnivorous diet is because of the shit they stopped eating. The stuff that they should not have been eating.
Before I go, do you have any questions that are not related to nutrition? Because I feel like you guys really care about this sort of stuff. I'm not as much of an expert in that field. But if you got any questions before I go about anything else, then feel free to ask.
Yeah, no, from me, just that one. Get Michael Greger to front chat to me.
Well, you've got my email now. Please, it's doing me a favor, to be honest. It's providing me with content. And if you guys want to draw up, like, for each plant-based doctor, even the acclaimed, esteemed ones, if you want to draw up, like, what was that you said, that the list of vegan nervous questions or something, Drew, that you started
the daunting dozen.
Yeah. Just do the same thing for each respective plant-based doctor. And it's helping me out. It's taking some of the work off my plate. And I'll ask every single one of them to the doctors.
Well, I'll just give you my list. And if you want to credit me, that would be great. And I'll just give you my list and you can pick and choose what you want from them. And then you can use that whenever you want. I do have one last question for you before you go. You've said that you are not an expert in nutrition. I totally understand that.
Although I have got published research out there, man, that nobody knows.
Well done on that, by the way.
Thanks, man. I can't believe in the 3-4 years that I've been interviewing plant-based doctors, it did not cross my mind at any point to talk about, because it's difficult getting peer-reviewed stuff published. I can't believe I've never mentioned it before. Just completely forgot. Anyway, go ahead. Not that it matters or anything, but yeah.
Well, you just self-admittedly say that, you don't eat the best diet. There's there's just some personal stuff going on with that. So that's fine. I just want to put this question out to you. You don't even need to answer. I just want you to take it with you is, how much health are you willing to sacrifice to remain on the vegan diet? That is a question I like to ask vegans, and I like them to basically sit with that and just take it home with them, because in my opinion, if you're animal crazy and the worst thing that you can imagine doing in this planet is to kill a cow and eat it, I get that. But how much health are you willing to sacrifice in order to remain in that position where you're not killing the cow? In other words, when is it going to be the cow over you? You know what I'm saying? So that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah. And you probably know my answer. It's that doesn't really come into it, because whenever I eat healthy plant-based food, I feel great. So why would I go to animal products? And if I did, then I'd probably go to oysters or something that don't have a central nervous system. Why? Okay. I mean, do you think about doing that, Drew?
Well, like I said, the main issue for me was the fiber. So it wasn't a question of missing out on something. Like, I didn't need something to be supplemented from the animal foods. I needed to get rid of the plant foods. For me, it was getting rid of the plant foods that helped me. And it still is that, by the way.
Why didn't you do that via oysters?
Like, just literally live on oysters and eggs? I guess that's a thought. I never thought of that. And that seems, I love oil. I love, scallops and whatnot, but
oysters don't have, don't feel pain.
If I'm perfectly honest, I believe that ruminant animals are our ancestral foods. Like, I do think that we are designed
your
to
worldview changed.
Correct, because vegan
ideology.
Well, I was never vegan for the animals in the first place. So for me, like, once I was convinced thoroughly that the health argument was no longer part of the, like, once I was convinced basically that health was not coming my way through the vegan diet, that's when I was able to release the guilt and the shame, or whatever you want to call it, from needing to. I went from this food is a luxury and for taste buds only, and is also unhealthy for me, to thinking this food is necessary and optimal for my human health. So you can imagine that would affect my...
When you were plant-based, 100% plant-based vegan diet, did you not think, like, well, because you're doing it at the time to feel better and you thought it was a better health choice, and you don't think, it's also cool that I'm not actually...
Oh, it was great. It was such a great benefit. I love that about it. I thought it was so cool. Like, I'm saving the planet, I'm saving the animals, and I'm also eating the best diet in the world. Like, everything was great in that. On paper, it was great. But in the reality, when I really checked in with myself and I compared my results and I looked around and I was like, these guys aren't getting good results either. You're struggling with weight. You're struggling with acne. You're struggling with mental. You're struggling with controlling your appetite. Like, I saw it all. I lived with vegans deep entrenched, like the Hawaii crew. Like, we all had these. I mean, when have you ever been to a vegan potluck at somebody's actual house where 25 people show up? Like, we had this regularly.
Yeah.
So imagine that, like couples, people with babies, like we had it all, like Ellen Fisher, everybody's around in the mix. And I'm watching and I'm looking at everybody and I'm talking to them and I'm also getting my own results. And I'm like, I'm there to learn. Like I went there in part I basically went there for an education of sorts to like learn more about this, be around more people, really like get super deep into it. And it's like, when I went to Catholic school as a kid, like it's part of the reason why I'm not religious now. Like I got so close to it that it basically turned me off. And that's what happened with veganism is like I got so close to the reality of the situation that the truth was unfolded to me. And in my opinion,
I can relate to that. There was a comment saying, look at Klaus's videos from a few years ago. He was real and honest. Now he's an actor.
I don't think he's an actor, guys.
Shit, I don't think he's an actor either. No.
Yeah, Klaus is not a fucking paid shill. Klaus, I get that too, dude. People say that shit to me. Drew, your shill. And then as people are pointing out, like I put a vegan dating app out there. Like I fucking invested heavy, dude. Like I really went all in.
Time and money and everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I really care about this, but I'm not dogmatic and black and white. I'm preachy about it because it's not an efficient way to. I'm just like the reason that I got into this was because I couldn't stop thinking about every time I go to hospital, I see the food. Every time I hear about environmental conference not mentioning meat and dairy, I got really, really annoyed. And it would just occupy my mind for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, damn, I just want to do something where I can put my energy into it and then go home at the end of the day and not fucking think about it anymore. And that's what plant-based seeds was. It was an outlet for me to talk about what I believe in. Yeah, man. Dude.
And this sucks for you. Like, it really sucks for you because you had this outset, this intention, and it's public. And it's the same thing with me. Like, I made the fucking dating app, like all that stuff. You're on a much bigger level with this, so I'm not even going to compare the two. But look, now you're like everything was on autopilot in veganism for years. For the last 2 or 3 years, veganism, before about a year ago, veganism was on autopilot. Everybody was accepting of it. The WHO's bringing it into the guidelines. Like, you're just on the rise. You're flying, like all the doctors are agreeing with you guys. And then all of a sudden, boom, the bomb drops. Like, all these vegans are having issues around years 4 or 5. And that's specifically what Bart said as well, is that's when the deficiencies do start to kick in. I know I said that I didn't have any deficiencies, but I don't really know that. Like I said, my penis stopped working. So what do I really know? You know what I'm saying? And it didn't completely stop working, but it failed me, and it's never failed me before. So, I want to just say, like, I know it's late there, and I know you're tired.
Age, son.
What's that?
Wait till you get to my age, son.
Well, I know that it's late there, and I know that you're tired, but like, honestly, when I talk to you, it's like I'm getting the same reaction from you that I see. It's like this struggle. Honestly, like I'm seeing the struggle. I'm seeing the struggle when you talk to these doctors. Like, you seem like somebody who's trying to figure this shit out. You want the answers too. You thought you had it figured out. And like, I'm not a psychologist, but like, you're just being faced with the reality of the situation that it's like Jackson. Like, I talked to Plantriotic, he just was faced with this wall of reality. Like, fuck, like I'm invested in this thing. Like, and the problem with the vegan diet is that you're not even allowed to try it out. Otherwise, you lose your vegan street cred. And probably a lot of people are not going to be happy with you if you were to come out and be like, you know what? Like, fuck, that's Jackson. He's got 35K. You got a lot more and a lot more like high-end notoriety. So it's a problem for you. Like, you can't just test these waters out. You know what I mean?
I'm not really fazed by that, man. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't like a little bit in terms of like, if I had to change direction, it would be a shift. But the great thing with being called plant-based news and not vegan news is that, if
smart play,
the optimal diet is like a blue zone diet and some animal products were good, then it doesn't necessarily change the direction of the channel. But I'm not going to take like 6 or 7 examples from YouTube and let that out trump tons of other data.
Right. No, that's fine. And I wouldn't either. But I would like start looking critically at the people that you do know in real life and be like, Like, where are your results? You know, and like you said, it's very hard to maintain like you yourself believe a whole food plant-based diet is the way to go, but like you can't maintain it and nobody around you can maintain it. You're saying that most vegans that you know are
and
healthy.
the majority of people couldn't maintain any protocol where you're ditching processed food. It's fucking hard, man. It's really hard. Whatever camp you're in the ketogenic or vegan, it's like it's everywhere from processed meat to like processed vegan. It's not.
Yeah,
it's
no, I agree with you.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree with you. Yeah, we're all in agreement on that. Yep. But yeah, it's just that extra mile, I guess, to make sure that you are, if that's what your care is, if you are interested in the optimal health, like, I don't know, like as we get older, like it does become more important to maintain that, like that cognitive function and whatnot. And who knows where this goes with the whole vegan thing.
Yeah, right. Mate, I'm interested in doing like a 30-day whole food plant-based diet and then a 30-day vegan keto diet and comparing and doing a little experiment. That would be interesting. I know you'd want me to do like a 30-day. I just can't. I don't want to eat meat, man. Do you not want to eat?
I wouldn't even suggest that to somebody who, like, if somebody is not interested in it and they are also getting like relatively good results, like they don't feel absolute shit, like I would just say don't even bother. Like I'm not interested in converting people who are doing
getting
well.
Results.
That's stupid. Like that's going against what I'm saying, because I tell people to look at your own results. So that would be dumb. Like it's not what I'm about. So anyway, I don't want to keep you here for too long, man, because we'll keep going.
I appreciate the chat. Is really, if I was getting pumped up earlier, is this friendly banter rather than any animosity. But I saw a couple of comments in the chat saying Klaus seems really angry. So sorry if I seemed like really.
I get the same thing, Klaus. People, anytime I get fired up and start getting passionate, people start thinking I'm angry. That's not what's going on for me either.
Cool.
It's all just good banter. And look, I'm really looking forward to the possibility of doing some work together. Look, I really do want to talk to Michael Greger, and I will be respectful to him to his face. But I will absolutely tear him.
So if you could send me the questions in the next month, that'd be really great.
No worries, I will.
Thanks a lot.
No, thank you.
Bye, Klaus. Have a good night.
Yep.
Okay, well that was Klaus from Plant Based News, guys. If you guys aren't
aware. Oh, fuck me.
So that was a intermission of sorts. That was fun. I think that was worthwhile content. LA Methwich, Klaus is so tired he can't hold his head up. Yeah, it's freaking 1 a.m. there, or 2 a.m. We got to give the guy some credit. You know, it's 10 a.m. or something for Bart. It's 5:50 for me. Like we're all over the world.
It's called to 1 p.m. here, but hey, good guess.
12:45.
Yeah, 12:45. Boy.
All right, so where should we go from here, Bart?
Well, let's just wrap up with just a quick sort of scheme on what these two gents are going to be doing. So you've got one that's a vegan that's 50.
No, the young guy's vegan.
Okay, the young guy's a vegan. He's going to go on an omnivore diet rather than a full carnivore.
Yes.
Okay.
And basically just note any differences. He's going to Japan during the experiment, so he's going to basically be consuming some,
Okay. You might not see very much.
I don't think so either. That's my hypothesis, on this.
Yeah. I mean, these kind of diets that are going to cause any kind of problems, they're going to cause it over years, not a few days. So I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's a good.
I mean, he's fairly on the lean side, so I'm wondering if he's going to be like, man, I felt like a little more powerful or something like this, which, who knows? Yeah.
Okay. So he might even gain some weight, actually, because he's going to start mixing more fats in with more carbs,
right?
Which will set that Randall cycle situation off. It may actually cause him some inflammation.
Okay.
Which will be interesting to see. I mean, the one thing that people should get very clear in their heads about me anyway is that I am absolutely against a mixed macro diet.
Same.
In terms of carbs and fat. It is a bad idea. It will necessarily biologically lead you to inflammation through very clearly defined biological pathways. Not the way to go. So, okay, he's going to do that for 30 days. Good luck. And then your older gent of about 50 is a carnivore?
He is a current carnivore for 8 months. He's lost 100 pounds. He eats every other day.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's excited about eating a lot of food. So that's why he wants to try veganism for 30 days.
Okay, so he's going to go to veganism. So what's probably going to happen with him is he's going to get digestive disorders, I would say.
Yep.
He's going to get inflammation like you wouldn't believe, I would suggest, probably because of the reintroduction of those inflammatory plant foods. You're not going to see any deficiencies over 30 days. No. That's not going to be happening, so that's fine. You might see changes in some of the bloods. As I say, you'll see probably increased total cholesterol, increased LDL, and possibly increased HDL, but that's less likely. Possibly even a reduction in HDL. Trigs will probably go up. I mean, preemptively, that's what I suggest you would probably see. We might see slightly different things. It'll be interesting. It's let's not call it an experiment. It's more like an N=2 naturalistic observation, I guess. We're not really controlling anything or doing science here per se. We're just going, hey, this will be interesting, and I agree, it will be interesting.
Well, I hope you follow along. I want your feedback as it goes on.
Yeah, and it possibly even at 1 or 2 stages during the 30 days, we could get the 4 of us on, and we can sort of nut through a few things, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, I'm talking to them tomorrow. So everybody in here, just so that you know, tomorrow is going to go down with these 2 gentlemen, and then I'll probably check in with them in 2 weeks, and then one time after the month is over, and then I would imagine that I want another pair to go right when these guys are done, and then we'll learn from this experiment, and then we'll set another one up, and I want to do it again right away.
Awesome. Okay, and from my side of things, what's coming up later on in about 5 hours and 45 minutes, I'll be talking to Elliot Overton about EMF and infrared and Jack Cruzy stuff. That'll be really good. Elliot is a fascinating speaker with a lot of clues about what he's on about. He's a great presenter, and I'm just going to set him up on his hind legs and let him do his thing like he did with the Oxalate talk. So that'll be great. No prep time needed for me, so that's awesome. Also, in the meantime, you can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, and you can also support me on Patreon or subscribe star if you don't like Patreon.
Well, we'll wrap it up with Bart here. Bart, pleasure meeting you. Pleasure talking. We've got the extendo live session here, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good, and let's do it again.
Absolutely. All right, man, and we'll be in touch.
All right, cool.
Take it easy. Okie dokie, Bart K, everybody. That was a fantastic 3 hours and 20 minutes, especially with the addition of Klaus. That was nuts. It provided me with a little bit of intermission as well. I got to just pull up and take a seat front row to that whole exchange that they were having, and then getting involved with it myself. Klaus, I feel something for Klaus. I got a lot of people giving love to Klaus. 100% agree, man. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about Klaus. I've said it for a long time when I watch him interview these doctors. Like, I don't think that he's necessarily fully believing what they're saying sometimes. But yeah, it was a great interview today. So yeah, Garland Farms, welcome to the stream. Now, you did miss a hell of a stream, Garland Farms, I gotta say. Fantastic. Definitely worth rewatching today. We covered so much stuff. I got to ask Bart like so many questions. Klaus from Plant Based News came on. I asked him a bunch of questions from my Daunting Dozen vegan questionnaire list. It's a list that I made to specifically ask vegans that come on my show. So I'm gonna catch up with the chat. Vegan Rev's been talking shizzy. I actually didn't block you, Vegan Rev, and I didn't actually take away your comments, but Carnival did. Can someone not blocked ask Drew if Elise tastes better now that she lives on drizzled spinach and cooked eggs? What the hell is drizzled spinach? Vegan Revolution, you do not faze me, sir. Like, you are your comments, your trolling is like not even get on my level, bro. You're not even close to touching me. I would even read your shit on screen and probably even respond to it. It's just basic. You're a basic troll. Honest AF, thank you for coming. LA Methwitch, all the familiar faces. I love you guys. You guys like makes me feel like I'm speaking in front of friends. Like if I was giving a presentation and then like you guys show up, feels great. He contributes nothing. Vegan Rev, you got to contribute, man. If you're gonna be a vegan troll, at least like, you know, Klaus was looking for the tap in, like he was looking for the help from you. You could have at least showed up and given him something. But instead you wasted it, man. You squandered the opportunity and you asked dumb shit. How did you ever get 10,000 people to follow you on YouTube? You leftist vegan Antifa. Come on, man. Get it together. Get it together, Vegan Rev. You know, I like having this vegan opposition in here too. Like, I welcome you guys. I don't have an issue talking to you in the chat. We have a lot of cool vegans, actually. Yeah. So, any last questions for me? Hit me up. I'm actually chilling now. I had the stream with Christine earlier today, which was dope. Round 2, we covered so much stuff, and fantastic day of streaming for Mother's Day. We do it for the mommies. He's got a clip of Vegan Revolution saying insects are worth the same as humans. My God. Okay. All right. Yeah, he actually has he's on a whole other level with his spirituality. I'll say that about Vegan Revolution. We just don't agree. We're just never going to agree. We're never going to see eye to eye. It's probably our social upbringing, like just the way that we grew up as kids. We're just never, ever going to see the same way. So like, why even try? But thanks to Klaus too. Like I really do. Yeah. I was fine with Klaus coming in. I actually was great. I'm scrolling way up in the chat. What did I miss? Like, man, these interviews, I can't keep up with the chat when the interview's going. Oh, Brighton says she was strict for 9 months straight and for several months at a time throughout 9 years, and then about 80-90% of the time raw vegan. So basically I was very stupid. Brighton, why are you so cool? You're great. You seriously kill me. No, not you, Siri. Oh, Vegan Revolution. See, this is a question I would have asked Carnival. Have you ever had your ego personality diagnosed professionally? Have you ever had your ego issues diagnosed professionally? That is a hilarious question. That is super funny, man. No, I haven't been diagnosed professionally, but I'm willing to hear your opinion on it. Like, you can let me know where, like, is my ego out of control, or what do you think? I'm unaware of it. I think I'm perfect. So, the Bart K. Great stream. Thank you, Tess. Thank you for the support earlier. That was amazing. I definitely appreciate the super chatties. Hopefully the stream doesn't get demonetized because I threw down a Metallica in the beginning. Drew's an angel. You are the least egotistical streamer to date. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Man, you know, I've even talked to my friends in real life about this whole thing. Like, yes, I'm against vegans, and I thoroughly enjoy that. Don't get me wrong. And I unapologetically share my story and my experience and bring people onto the channel and get into it when I need to, disagree when I need to, and do all that. But like, I find it even more necessary for me to remain checking myself, not necessarily without bias. I'm totally fine with having an obvious bias. However, I do need to, you know, if I have some weird pains or something like that in my body, I do need to share it, because I feel like I am representing like carnivore or high animal foods. And if I were to hide something that, you know, is contradictory to the health I'm saying I'm getting from this diet, then I think that would be wrong. So I do try and share it as much as possible. Like I said, I get a little bit spacey and weird if I do intermittent fasting for too long. I have no problem sharing that. My body odor, guys, I think, I don't know if it's summer coming around or what, but my body odor is kicking. And I smelled as a vegan too, but like, I think it might be a little worse as a high animal food eater. Just saying. Brighton says, your ego is not out of control, in my opinion. Only someone with a huge ego would ask you such a question. Someone told me yesterday, they said, and I quote, Drew, you are trying to offend my ego, which does not exist. So therefore, blah, 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 blah. I was like, that's a very egotistical thing to say, that you do not have an ego. Like, I don't claim I don't have an ego. I probably have a pretty big ego. I just don't think it's a bad one. Carnivore isn't perfect. Nothing's perfect, man. You're gonna impregnate you. No, I don't want kids. No kids here. Keto crotch. Is Evan Rock still vegan? No, he's not. Yeah, my pheromones are popping right now. I'll tell you that much. Who am I having next on my stream? So tomorrow will be the 2 guys that I'm doing the experiment with. So tomorrow will be Nate and Joe. And they couldn't be further from each other in terms of everything. But they're going to swap diets for a month, basically. And we're going to keep track of them. It's going to be awesome. And Joe Felder has stepped in and he wants to help me out with the blood test situation. So I'm going to see if I can get these guys on blood test before the actual thing starts. And that'll make it even more interesting. Drew, how tall am I? 5'10". Yeah, muscle mass and height are super correlative. Like, if you weigh less but are shorter, you're obviously going to show a lot more muscle mass. Let's see. CMC is live. Gonna bounce stream. All right, man. Later, newly awakened. I'm gonna cut my stream in a second here. I made a big mistake. Yes, sir. Damn, Carnival. You must be smelling good over there. All right, everybody. Thank you again for showing up. We are going to cut the stream now and go enjoy. Let's see. Who do you say was streaming again? I am lost. Oh, Charles. Duh. Yeah, go check out CMC, guys. He was on the stream the other day. So, all right, peace. Once again, we'll give you the flex on the way out. And happy Mother's Day. Bye.